Jon Anik and Kenny Florian podcast. Jon Anik and Kenny Florian.
I f***ing love him. I can't get enough of him.
Let's hear that Boston next.
Big jab there from Duffy, and Frank Mir is hurt now. Down goes Duffy, call. Frank Mir does it again. Rock'em sock'em robots here. Oh my goodness. Hyperbole.
There are a couple of absolutely self-involved bullshit artists.
Here are your hosts, Jon Anik and Kenny Florian.
Well, it's good to see Kenny Florian. He's going to take a 2-hour respite from becoming a more lethal weapon. To indulge us here on the Anik and Florian podcast, there's a sound clip in our open, KenFlo. I'm glad I made you laugh already. That's a big part of my goal over the next 2 hours. Thanks to everybody joining us live. But there's a lot to get to today. A pay-per-view week is upon us. I'm very excited. My Sydney itinerary is right in front of me. But there is a clip in our show open that it says, let's hear that Boston accent. And you would think 500 episodes, 535 episodes in, I would know where that clip comes from. So perhaps Cody or you or somebody in our audience could let me know where exactly that clip comes from. And hopefully that doesn't get us in any trouble. But I am very excited. I have 2 pens, wheels up to Sydney here in a few hours. A lot to get into. What is that t-shirt you're wearing, KenFlo?
Yeah, I'm trolling a little bit. It's at the
Institute of Virology. Is that how that's pronounced?
Yes, exactly.
Look at you. And what is that?
I'm
hat?
a jackass. This is my show-your-old hat, kid. These guys have been supporting me since like day one. Yeah.
They send you a brand new, beautiful gi, like seemingly every 6 weeks, which is amazing. All right. Thanks to everybody for being with us. You know, I love when the UFC goes middleweight main event into middleweight championship like this. I know there are a lot of factors when it comes to the calendar and matchmaking and everything else, but to have this result for Nassourdine Imavov leading into UFC 312 is just spectacular. We'll get into all of that, of course, with KenFlo. We got Ray Longo coming up. Brian Petrie is back. These guys have 8 picks and all of their bets for UFC 312. And time permitting and his schedule permitting in Mexico City, Mexico, we will be joined by the former 2-time UFC bantamweight champion Dominick Cruz on the back end of the program as well. But it is Monday, February 3rd, 2025, episode 536 of the Anik and Florian podcast presented by DraftKings. DraftKings, the crown is yours. So what were your viewing habits like this weekend, KenFlo? UFC Fight Night, Adesanya versus Imavov, 12 p.m. Eastern, main card on ESPN+. Now, this is not a platform on which we complain about viewing times because a lot of our audience is international and global and English, and they don't want to hear it. But KenFlo, watching on my cellular telephone at noon p.m. Eastern, we will take it every day of the week.
Absolutely. It's typically our wives that complain about it, right? But no, it was great. It was great watching some high-level MMA on a Saturday afternoon. Doesn't get much better than that, man. And we had some great fights.
Great fights, great showcase for the UFC as usual. Nice to get back into this cycle where we have back-to-back events, and that, of course, is going to be the norm throughout the rest of this first quarter. Look pretty festive there in Saudi Arabia as usual. You had Power Slap and the UFC and everything else. We also will get into a lot of things that transpired in the mixed martial arts world. Bryce Mitchell's comments, Dana White's comments on the back end, Jan Blachowicz chiming in, and everything else. So let us get into the program if we could. Headlines brought to you by Cuervo. Now's a good time to enjoy the tequila that invented tequila. Later in the program, we will take the first shot of the fight weekend. Cristalino live in the morning. Nothing like it. All right, UFC Fight Night, Adesanya versus Imavov. And it is Nassourdine Imavov, KenFlo. And it did not take long at the 30-second mark of round 2. Lands a shot, sort of dovetailing with some of your analysis as Israel Adesanya was backing up. That was the beginning of the end. Mark Goddard, I believe, was the referee who stepped in. And we got a bona fide middleweight contender. Nassourdine Imavov has a signature win, and he is all the rage here on a Monday morning.
Yeah, well, on the last podcast, I said my spidey senses were tingling in that I didn't love this fight for Israel Adesanya. Why? Because Imavov is an absolute beast, and he's really coming into his own right now. And we've seen a little bit of a decline, if you will, in Israel Adesanya's game. And is he still a fantastic fighter? I thought he actually had a really solid round 1 where I thought he was winning. But in round 2, as I talked about in that little on that little lean back with the hands down. That is something that is pretty common for a lot of the city kickboxing guys. And Imavov has a style that can expose that pretty well as he kind of charges forward and throws hooks and overhands. Landed a big shot on Israel Adesanya. Didn't put him out. Credit to Izzy, who wanted to keep on fighting, but he did get the job done. What a performance there by Imavov.
So one of the things I have in my notes, patterns, and oftentimes when you have a champion that has put all of this film on tape, right? Dricus Du Plessis in the lead up to UFC 312 and the Countdown show sort of talked about some of Izzy's tendencies that maybe he used against him in the finishing sequence when he beat him at UFC 305. And I know a lot of fight fans and pundits, and I think rightfully so at times, jump to conclusions on a Monday morning and say, as Luke Thomas and I think others have, that Israel Adesanya should retire, but he certainly had moments in the Dricus Du Plessis fight. He certainly had moments early against this absolute killer Nassourdine Imavov, whom we will get back to in a moment. I just don't think he's necessarily done. Is he done being a world champion? Perhaps. But to what extent now, on the heels of a third straight loss, do you think Israel Adesanya is done winning fights or being competitive against the middleweight elite?
Gosh, I'm a little biased here, if I'm being candid. I have a soft spot in my heart for Israel Adesanya, a guy that I talked to, online a bunch. I still have not met him in person, but, used to talk to him a lot before he was getting started in the UFC. And to see what he's accomplished in this sport is just unbelievable. And I think that the hope for any MMA fighter, and I guess this goes for any job, is that you take more from the game than it takes from you. And that just isn't the reality for most. So is he done? I think you put it perfectly. I'm not sure, he can necessarily be a champion again. It's possible. He still is fighting at a high level. But when guys figure you out, that's where you got to be careful. So it's extremely hard to reinvent yourself year after year, especially when you've been on top for as long as Israel Adesanya has. So that's a little bit of a concern for me. He's still a star in the sport, and the UFC can still use him to make a bunch of money. How much longer he sticks around, I don't know, or how long he should be, I don't know. But when you start to see decline, you start to wonder, okay, well, what am I fighting for? Do I want to get out of the game before I get seriously hurt? So I don't know. I mean, Imavov's a fantastic fighter. Losing to Imavov is it's not embarrassing at all. He's still very, very tough. So I don't know. It was tough to watch, if I'm being honest, to see Izzy go out like that, because I do really care for him as a fighter, and he's done so much for the sport as well.
So Laura Sanko said on the broadcast, one shot to kill a legend or whatever it was. And he said, I'm not dead yet. I believe in terms of Izzy's commitment, his discipline, his motivation, it's all still there. I think his net worth ties into this. He comes from a remarkable family. Absolutely love his sister Deb and his parents, whom we have sat down to. We sat down with his folks actually back in 2019 and discussed the pronunciation of his name and how they handled it in his kickboxing career and everything else. But yes, you and I both absolutely love this man. He screams legend. I know some people scoff when I suggest that Izzy has this Michael Jordan-like aura, but if you don't want to take it from me, take it from Dominick Cruz, who had the chance to do a fighter meeting with him for the first time, I think maybe ever recently, and just was in total awe of sort of the spirituality and everything that was sort of exuding from this man. Special man, special fighter. This is certainly not the note on which he is going to go out. I liked him this weekend. The odds makers suggested he was a 2-1 favorite. I still think he can be competitive. And I will say, and maybe there will be Kenny, and perhaps competitive is not the right adjective. I think he'll win fights against a lot of guys in the top 10. But in terms of his chin, right? I thought the stoppage was fine. But when he has been stopped by Alex Pereira and now Nassourdine Imavov, it's not as though he is twitching on the canvas.
Sure.
He is in recovery mode, I think, immediately in both of these instances, even if the result was an eventuality and it was the beginning of the end and all of that, so I don't know if you have anything for us on the chin, but I don't know. I still think he can be a real factor. And even if you don't have a huge appetite for him in like a rematch with DDP right now, to fight Brendan Allen, I think that's a fun fight.
Yeah, listen, I agree. I think that, those are shots, or the shot that Imavov landed on him are shots that would have hurt many of the top middleweights in the world, no matter what, no matter how fresh your chin is or not. So I think it was just kind of, Imavov connecting at the right time, unfortunately, potentially exposing that vulnerability of Israel Adesanya. But I think he'll be back. I certainly think he can continue to compete at a high level. Now, Michael Jordan could have probably done that another couple of years as well. Whether you need to or not, I don't know. I think Israel Adesanya is such a talented and intelligent guy that there's a lot of other things that he can do outside of the sport as well. I think he'd be a fantastic commentator as well, have his own show. Whatever he wants to do, he can do it. The world is his.
His Freestyle Benner YouTube channel has absolutely exploded. I think there are some real estate investments as well that project to do quite well. So I don't think that money is going to be an issue. And I think he has been paid handsomely. Part of the issue, and I promise we will get to Nassourdine Imavov, but part of the issue is legacy, right? And it's not as though there are any easy outs in this 185-pound division, right? Like even if you do a Paulo Costa rematch or anyone you want to pick out of that 185-pound division, KenFlo, it's not as though there are easy outs. So if you don't want to, risk ending your career with 4 straight L's or whatever it is, and you don't necessarily need the money, maybe this is an okay note upon which to go out. It seems like Dustin Poirier is going to have one final fight, one final swan song. Some fighters, I think, want to have that. I think some fighters don't necessarily pine to have all that, attention and pageantry on the way out. It'll be interesting to see what happens. But go ahead.
I'll add this as the last note. He's fought every single person in that division that really matters at this point. So I don't know if he has anything to gain. So that might be more of an issue, I think, moving forward than anything else for him, is going, I already beat all these other guys that I may have to fight. There's no one else out there that's really interesting enough for me, unless it's potentially for something to lead to an eventual title shot. And with now 3 losses in a row, that makes it a little bit more challenging. So I'm curious to see how he proceeds.
I got to think, though, the internal metrics, too, Kenny, suggest that he's a top 3 to 5 UFC superstar and pay-per-view draw. And so that could mean that, they pay him a really good show rate to continue to either headline fight nights or to be co-main event on pay-per-view. But regardless, if this indeed is the end of Israel Adesanya as bona fide middleweight title contender, what an absolute run. One of the greatest middleweight champions of all time, future UFC Hall of Famer to be sure. And there was a time where he was projecting to go down and surpass Anderson Silva as the greatest middleweight champion of all time, even if most would agree he came up a little bit short in that endeavor. All right, Nassourdine Imavov can beat you in a lot of different ways, and not a guy I would think that a lot of middleweights would want to see showing up in their bracket. I think it's fascinating as we're on the cusp of this middleweight championship rematch to think about how he would do in a rematch with Sean Strickland or how he would do against Dricus Du Plessis. But what did you make of Nassourdine Imavov on the ascent here with a big signature win over the weekend?
That's going to be a confidence builder, huh? Yeah, no, listen, he's been getting so much better in regards to the full package of mixed martial arts skills that he shows inside the octagon, whether it's his striking in the clinch, his striking from the outside, or his ability to stop takedowns or get back to his feet if he does get taken down, his ability to control if he's in guard. He has shown some skills that have really improved since when he first debuted. Also has shown a lot of maturity and composure over the last couple of years as well. So I think he's posed to really make a serious run at the belt. And I wouldn't rule out that he's capable of getting it. He's going to be a problem for a lot of people out there, John. Physically, he's impressive. He continues to work on all of his skills everywhere. He's being put into a lot of these main event spots, which is going to give you a lot of confidence and experience. So I'm excited. I'm excited to see what he does next because, I love watching him fight, man.
So he just took out a guy who is one of the greatest champions this division has seen in whatever form you want to suggest Adesanya is in at present, right? A guy who can match a lot of the size that Imavov has in this middleweight division, right? If memory serves, that loss to Sean Strickland was at 205 pounds. Perhaps Cody could check me on that. But in terms of the future for Nassourdine Imavov, right? I did a poll question for the podcast as to who he would fight next. And I didn't include Khamzat Chimaev because all indications are that even though Khamzat Chimaev is not in Australia to back up for the main event, I think Caio Borralho might be going. I don't know if he's actually on the corner audio sheet. I should probably check that, right? But I'm not even considering Khamzat Chimaev as a next opponent for Nassourdine Imavov because I think Chimaev is going to be next for the belt. So, poll question for the Anik and Florian podcast after his signature win, Kenny, over Israel Adesanya. Who would you like to see Nassourdine Imavov fight next? Caio Borralho, Robert Whittaker, the winner of DDP Sean Strickland, or the loser of DDP Sean Strickland? And you can say Khamzat Chimaev in a middleweight title eliminator, and you can get strong disagreement from me on that. But any thoughts as to what you would do promotionally if you're Sean Shelby, McMahon, Dana White, and crew?
Right. Well, you want to make the best fights possible that give two rising stars the opportunity to fight for the belt sometimes, but sometimes you want options as a promoter or a matchmaker. And I think in this case, I would not want to cancel out two guys in Caio Borralho and Imavov. I like both of those options in the future. So I think that perhaps the loser of DDP and Strickland makes a lot of sense. I think, not only would you have an exciting fight, but you create that story as a guy who has beaten a former champion, two former champions now in the middleweight division. And so I kind of like that better as an option.
I like the way you laid that out. And I think the good news for Imavov, and I reference it off the top of the show, is just when this fight is happening, because you are just so relevant in this conversation. Now, when we go off the air, oftentimes our producers, Zach Candido, Michael LaPlante, they build a B-roll package, and they're not the ones building it. Shout out to our entire production team, but they'll build a B-roll package, footage of the next middleweight title contender, right? So I can tell you without looking at the format that after we wrap Du Plessis, and you know where I'm going, Strickland, Act 2, right? We're going to have Khamzat Chimaev B-roll there. But there's a chance they add some Nassourdine Imavov B-roll, and had this fight happen maybe several weeks ago, maybe they don't do that. So I think the timeline, the calendar really plays out well for him. I think if Du Plessis loses to Strickland and the result is conclusive, I think Dricus Du Plessis and Nassourdine Imavov in a main event, a true eliminator where there's a title fight on the line. Yeah, you're salivating. I know.
I'm salivating for that, and I'm also salivating because of Strickland and Khamzat Chimaev and the words they've had back and forth, the fact that they're former training partners. But the middleweight division, man, has never been better.
And I feel like I was saying that 18 months ago. But right now you have Jared Cannonier versus Gregory RoboCop Rodriguez. That is February 15th, the main event. And let us be clear, RoboCop is another guy, I assure you, you don't want showing up in your bracket, right? He's a Terminator. He's got chokes, undeniable knockout power, strength and conditioning at the Institute of Human Performance. We'll see if he can get past Jared Cannonier. Brendan Allen fight Anthony Fluffy Hernandez. Anthony fucking Hernandez. Either February 22nd, he fights PA. Marvin Vettori, Roman Dolidze, March 15th. It's been a long time since we've seen Marvin Vettori. So Cody chimes in here. Michel Pereira versus Abus Magomedov, April 26th. The last Abus Magomedov I saw, Kenny, looked like the greatest middleweight of all time.
He looked good.
I almost spilled my Cuervo Tradicional Cristalino there. More on that later in the program. But yes, I mean, there is no curbing my enthusiasm for the UFC's middleweight division at present. All right. Congratulations to Nassourdine Imavov. Maybe we'll have him on a future episode of the Anik and Florian podcast. We are going to try to get more into the fighters here in 2025. I'd like to get your thoughts, if I could, on the co-headliner, the co-main event, Michael Venom Page over Shara Bullet Magomedov, unanimous decision, 30-27 times 2, 29-28 from the dissenting judge. Big win for Michael Venom Page. Your thoughts on that, KenFlo?
The most difficult guys to prepare for still in 2025 in mixed martial arts are the karate guys with tremendous footwork. And that is Michael Venom Page. My goodness. And then you add in the fact that this guy is absolutely massive, crazy reach, and he's extremely fast, still very physically capable, although he's maybe a little bit later, there's a late part of his career. And man, he looked absolutely fantastic. I think matchups make fights. I think he liked this matchup for a reason. It's why he went up to 185 pounds. And yeah, I mean, he just created fits for Sharapov. I mean, he just didn't know what the heck to do. So I think that, he was luring him into traps. He was like a ghost anytime, Shara Bullet was trying to move forward. And yeah, I think this was the best performance of his short UFC career so far.
So oftentimes we will say that a win ages well or ages gracefully because a fighter like Muin Gafurov all of a sudden looks like a world beater. And it's like, hey, I beat that guy back in the day. Now you could argue that since MVP beat Kevin Holland, that win, his lone win coming into this one in the UFC, hadn't aged all that well because Kevin Holland has lost 4 of 5 fights in a row, right? Then he goes in and he fights Ian Machado Gary without hesitation, gets out grappled and out wrestled, and then comes back and beats a guy who is getting a promotional push and beats him in a dominant way. Very difficult guy to fight is Shara Bullet, right? And now MVP goes back to 170 pounds. And I don't know, I think public perception is probably split as to just how successful he can be. But, am I going to use the word bracket again? Like, Cody, give me the welterweight top 10, right, Kenny? Like, there are a lot of guys who are going to have a lot of difficulty fighting Michael Venom Page, whether he's 37, 42 or otherwise.
There's no question about that. I think that this also will be a nice confidence builder for him here. Shara Bullet is a problem. Magomedov can give a lot of strikers and a lot of different mixed martial artists fits himself. But this is a guy that in MVP that you really can't prepare for. There's very few guys physically who can replicate that, and very few guys physically that can replicate that. There's very few guys technically that can replicate that. He's just such a savvy operator on the feet. My goodness. One of the best feints in the game, period.
So you are seeing, Kenny, that welterweight top 15 populated. So MVP there at number 15 in the world. Stephen Wonderboy Thompson is 11th. I think maybe you could do something like that. There are other matchups. Maybe Colby Covington would not be one that you would be itching to make necessarily, right?
Yeah.
You see Joaquin Buckley there, not going to fight down to number 15 in the world. Right. Kenny, is there any name that you would pluck off the page there? I think Michael Morales and Gilbert Dorino Burns might have some business to attend to. Any thoughts as you look at that welterweight top 15? Because MVP said he's got some business to attend to. I got to think it's going to be one of those names you see right there.
Yes, sir. Well, I would say, the Wonder Boy fight is one that really fascinates me. And I know they're kind of boys and they both come from a karate background, but man, what a fight that would be. I'd be fascinated by that one. Just seeing Vicente Luque right there at 14. I think that's a fight that makes a whole lot of sense. And Michael Page would certainly have to keep his wrestling defense in order there. But Luque, has shown that he can still get it done. So I think that would be a really fun fight.
MVP is not talking like a guy who is obsessing over the world title, but perhaps that might factor into his decision. Either way, he set himself up for a big fight, and we look forward to the rebuild for Shara Bullet. All right, what did you make of Sergey Pavlovich's win over Biggie Boy Jairzinho Rozenstruik? A lot of things were made of just prioritizing a win, and I think rightfully so, right? 30-27 times 3, and I do think, Kenny, there are times in a mixed martial arts career, whether you're a heavyweight or a flyweight, where you're searching for a green stripe, you got to get it by any means necessary. And whether it's the fight that fans expect or not, when you win 30-27 against a guy in Biggie Boy who was building and crescendoing and on the incline still, I think it's a big win for Pavlovich, and he keeps himself at the very least in the top 5 and in the mix.
I think it was a big win for that reason, John. And I also think it was a big win for me in analyzing what he was out there doing technically. To me, I think Pavlovich showed a lot more composure here. I don't know if it's, a matter of him maybe realizing that he can get hurt on the feet and, that he has to be a little bit more mindful there and more technical, but his entries, his ability to get in and get out just seemed way sharper and way smarter. He was patient. He wasn't forcing a knockout. He wasn't, going at a pace that was not sustainable. He just seemed really cool, calm, and comfortable throughout, mixed in his takedowns at the right times as well. So we saw his full skills, his full set of skills on Saturday night. And, I think both guys showed a lot of respect early in that first round, but I think Pavlovich started to let loose a little bit more as he moved towards the fight and felt more comfortable. And I thought it was a fantastic experience, performance, maybe not his best performance as far as excitement or getting these crazy knockouts like he's known for, but I think this was important for his development, John.
Vinicius Oliveira and Said Nurmagomedov competed in the fight of the night, and I was watching at that point with closed captions, KenFlo, so I still don't know. I'm looking it up right now if it's Loke or Lock Dog, but either way, it's Vinicius Oliveira, KenFlo. You shaking your head because of some Nurmagomedov coin, or talk to me?
Yeah, definitely for that. I was definitely really bullish on Said Nurmagomedov, and I thought he looked fantastic, as I knew he would in round one. He has so many skills, John. He was moving, he was grooving, he was feinting, he was finding a lot of success against the less technical Vinicius Oliveira. The problem is Oliveira, one of the largest bantamweights in the world right now, is so damn game and so physically powerful and always comes in shape that late in the fight, I started to get very nervous as we moved into round three. I said, this Brazilian guy is going to steal it from me, isn't he? And sure enough, he did. Now, I think Nurmagomedov has a case for maybe winning that fight, but I have no problems with Oliveira, even though I picked the Russian. I think Oliveira just really had more of a sense of urgency to win that fight, was landing more shots. Both guys were sloppy throughout. Said more from a standpoint of maybe just not coming in great shape or maybe not pacing himself very well. That's been kind of a vulnerability for him in past fights. But Oliveira, man, as game as it gets, and he stole another one here, man. What a performance.
Cody wrote in the chat, it's fucking Lock Dog because he is a lock. Now, I did just listen to the file, and yes, he says Lock Dog twice, which is outstanding because I feel like I have dropped a Lock Dog on an open microphone before. All right, Ray Longo is coming up in about 60 seconds, but we got big things coming up this weekend. I did ask KenFlo for a Super Bowl prediction later in the program. Chiefs and the Eagles coming up this weekend. Big weekend across the board, ladies and gentlemen, and you can get in on all the action of the big game and UFC 312 at DraftKings Sportsbook, the official sports betting partner of UFC. Men's middleweight championship, women's strawweight title, both on the line at UFC 312. We'll get our entire betting preview out there later, but of course, pro football crowns its champion this weekend as well. And if you are out there just getting started in this betting game, it can be as simple as picking a fighter or a team just to win outright this weekend on the straight wager front. Go to the DraftKings app, make your pick. That is all there is to it. And if you are new to DraftKings, may want to listen up to this. New customers can bet just $5 to get $200 in bonus bets instantly. All you need to do, download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use code AFPOD. That's code AFPOD for new customers to get $200 in bonus bets. When you bet just $5, it's a big weekend only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly on behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas. 21 plus. Age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. New customers only. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/audio. All right, ladies and gentlemen, you know what it is. Let us get to the ray of sunshine.
It's now time for the Ray Longo Minute.
I want you to punch a hole in his fucking chest. That's what I want.
The Ray Longo Minute. Starring Ray Longo. The Jon Anik and Kenny Florian podcast.
Oh,
Ray
yeah.
Longo. Ray Longo is live on YouTube on a Monday morning. You're looking good. You're looking lean and mean.
Live on YouTube.
You are live on YouTube. Anything you would like to say to the assembled masses, many of whom only turn in for your segment and then click away?
Ooh, thank you very much. Much appreciated. Very grateful.
Yeah.
Keep the good work going. Eliminate these two guys and just come in for the minute.
There you go. There you go.
Now,
So last week, the Ray Longo Minute was sponsored by Magic Spoon Protein Cereal. They're not back for more. So if you want to tell your friends that the Chicken Pound, the Ray Longo Minute, is now available on the sponsorship front again.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
So where were you on Saturday afternoon for the matinee? I mean, I felt a little bit spoiled getting that main card at noon Eastern. I don't know how that messed with your Saturday or if you liked it as much as KenFlo and I did, getting live fights in the middle of the day.
Man, I kind of like them. The ideal time for me is like they start at 4 and the main card starts at 7. For me, that's the main, because I'm at the gym, so I kind of have to stop and look, and I'm teaching guys to spar, and I'm not watching the sparring because the Izzy fight is on. So it's a little, that part I don't like. You know what I mean? I like to sit and actually watch the fights.
And I would imagine being in the gym, there's no way for you to avoid spoilers and watch it later without knowing the results, right?
No, impossible. Yeah.
All right.
Impossible.
All right. Sorry, G. I mean, I understand
He's
it.
Holy crow. What's he on this morning, Kenny? What'd he try?
Just coffee. My mug says best ducking dad.
Shrooms.
Nope. Best ducking dad, though.
Best dad. Hey.
Ducking dad. So, Ray.
Oh, who are those two guys?
Oh, look at that shirt.
Wow.
Oh, holy crow. This could be a new shirt.
Wow.
How about the album cover?
Should I do the
ANIKFLORIAN
podcast like this with
When
my
we were
eyes
younger.
my eyes looking over you two guys?
Look at that.
They look
We do
hot.
have a new Ray Longo design dropping in 2015, but you can go to jonanik.com, KennyFlorian.com right now, and promo code UFC312. You can get 15% off of all the One More Sleep and Anik and Florian podcast merchandise. But Raymond,
Yes.
Nassourdine Imavov is a problem.
Wow.
What a huge win for him against the former champ Israel Adesanya. To what extent were you able to see the 4.5-minute fight while you were cross-training?
Oh, that fight I saw. We had to stop and watch that fight. So yeah, phenomenal. Oh, is he? I don't know, man. It's a tough thing. Once you've been on top of that mountain and you lose a couple of times, man, it is so hard to get back. Isn't that funny, Kenny? It's like one fight, like 1 or 2 fights, and that's it. You're on a roll, but I don't know. I have to think it's, you become content, you have some money. You maybe were burnt out from fighting so often, but for whatever the reason is he's going to have a hard time winning the big fights at this point.
Yeah, you can rise so quickly and really decline so quickly, Ray. So is that what you think it is? Do you think it's maybe a loss of motivation, perhaps, or that maybe he's a little too comfortable?
I believe with every single one of those cases, that's what it is. That's just obviously a theory, but like I always said, the fight could have kept Weidman in his mother's basement. I don't think he was losing, but once you get out, you have a couple of houses, the kids are growing up, perspectives change, your outlook on life changes, and your brain still is telling you this is what I do. That's all you know how to do. So you keep doing it, but it's just it has to be a mental thing. It's not unless the guys are injured, but I mean, Izzy kind of alluded to like what he fought a lot before his, a couple of times, right? He wanted to take some time off, and maybe you get burnt out. Maybe your body just can't take it. You start getting older. It depends on where you are in your career, but I still think it has to be mental, really mental.
So do you think it's time for him to retire? I know that John always says we're not in the business of retiring fighters, but do you think it might be that time?
Depends on what your perspective is. Is your perspective to make money? Then don't retire. If your perspective is to win and get back to the, you think you're a champ again, I think at this point I'd have to say retire. But he looks good enough where he shouldn't retire, but it's all going to depend on the fights they give him.
Right.
Those high level fights now, maybe he just can't get up for anymore. I mean, I think he's pretty articulate. I think he could tell you Eugene has a good feeling on what's going on. It's only the guys that are in the circle that really know what's going on and what's transpiring. We don't get to see all of that, so people know one way or the other, but no, I'm sure he's making huge money. So why not, make the money and support your family?
Oh, there's no doubt he's one of the most handsomely paid guys on the roster, but you touched on a number of different things there. And you do notice how immediately the conversation does shift here to the losing fighter, Adesanya. I want to get your thoughts on Imavov on the back end in terms of his ceiling at middleweight, but the word hunger, right? Aaron Blanchfield is desperate. Grant Dawson is desperate. Nassourdine Imavov is desperate to win a world championship. And I don't even know the extent to which those fighters think about money. I know it's inexorably linked to the world championship, but Izzy can have the motivation, Kenny and Ray, to get through the training sessions. Maybe they are of a lesser quality than Nassourdine Imavov's because he is completely hell-bent and obsessed upon winning the world title. But I don't believe it's a lack of motivation or hours spent preparing for the competition for Izzy Ray at all.
Yeah. No, the way I always look at it, John, is that, how would that fight have gone like 4 years ago?
Well, are you talking about a prime Nasruddin Imavov at that point against a prime Adesanya or no?
Yeah. Just
I don't know.
That. See, that's the crazy part to me, because I know there were guys that, like Chris lost to, that he would have never lost to on the come up.
Yeah,
I just don't believe he would have.
Yeah, no, I think I know what you're alluding to, and it's tough to say, but I think there's a physical decline in Israel Adesanya. Would you say is that what you're trying to say? That's what I see. I don't see necessarily a guy that's like, I don't want it anymore, or I don't want to train hard anymore. I'm just kind of relaxing from my fight camp. I think he's training very hard. In fact, trying to do whatever he can to get back to that level he had before. But we can't forget that this guy came from a high-level kickboxing background, right? So before those high-level pro kickboxing fights, he had a lot of amateur fights. And then there's, obviously the preparing for the MMA prior to getting into the UFC. There's the training and preparation for this. He's been hit by Alex Pereira several times, right? So, I mean, this is, those that will take the fight out of you. I don't care who you are. We're all human. And that will take you, take it out of you. There's no question about it. So that's why I see a physical decline. And now I think it's up to him of either he accepts that and says, okay, I accept that, and now I got to take smart fights. Right. Or he says, I gave my best. I achieved what less than 1% of the population would ever do in this sport. I'm going to go do something else.
Yeah. I look, I think it's everything has to meet together. You're getting older. There's a physical decline. There's maybe not the motivation you had. It's everything coming together and hitting at that point. And I think that's what happens to all of these guys. I think, look, most of the stuff is anecdotal. We can't really tell exactly. So I just, from me being around, that's what I come up with. I see that, people become comfortable. They like fight and they still want to do it, but there's something that's not the same. It's just, and it has to be more mental than it is even physical, unless there was an actual physical ailment that you just can't do what you want to do. So, I don't know.
Kenny can't speak to a losing streak. Never mind the fact that he never fought on a prelim. No, I'm just trying to be funny with that last note. But Kenny, his last fight was against Jose Aldo for the world championship in October of 2011. Now his back intervened, but had Kenny gotten through the next training camp and maybe fought once more at lightweight and not won that fight, and there was no path to then a lightweight championship again, the guy's gone, and I don't know, what Kenny's net worth was at that time compared to Izzy's, right? But what about just getting a win, right? Having a green, I know. Right. I mean,
let's just address the net worth thing first. Yeah. Kenny's far ahead of that curve. Don't worry about it.
What about going out with a win, right? And not going out, if you're Adesanya, one of the greatest middleweight champions of all time, with 3 or 4 straight losses, right? You can understand why he would want to maybe solicit a fight or a matchup that gives him a great opportunity to go out with a win if he's not going to be chasing world titles any longer.
Yeah, that's all of that stuff is up to him. Because what happens, John, is I want to go out on a win. You know what I mean? And then you have to find the right guy for them to beat. You know what I'm saying? But in this organization, if you were a champion, you're gonna get tough fights. You're not going backwards until the very, very end. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like he's not sinking down after this fight. He might have to fight, one of the other top guys. Next time they'll give him maybe KO.
Kyle Bohalio? No. Yeah, he's not gonna fight.
You know what I'm saying? So another up and coming guy, you know what I mean? So it's how they choose fights. I had a great conversation with Cub Swanson. I think me, Cub, and Mark Delagrati, and he was asking me, you think I should retire? I go, dude, you looked fantastic in the last fight. You had great timing, your boxing is good, but it all depends on the matchups you get. I think you're at a point in your career where they should give you good matchups. You could keep fighting forever. There's a million guys you could pick off that roster that he could beat. Do you want to go into a 5-round grueling, grinding fight? No. At 41, I think, whatever he is, but there's still a million fights he could win, and it depends on what they want to do. I mean, I think if you're playing a numbers game and you're bottom line oriented, you're not going to give a guy making big money an easy fight. I don't think they're going to do it. I don't think it makes sense. They'd rather eliminate that expense to increase their bottom line. I think it's just a business thing. I don't even think, and it's right. It's not wrong. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because they build these guys up, and then if this happens, they kind of get stuck with a guy that's losing, that's making huge money. And I think that's the balancing act, is trying to either get the guy to retire or get him back on a win streak. But I don't think they want to pay that type of money to give him a guy that's ranked number 16.
Yeah. Kenny, I think, and Ray, there's a way to do a super fight. Now, I know Tim Simpson manages both Leon Edwards and Israel Adesanya, and those fighters have a relationship. But if you are trying to have a fight for Izzy, right, and maybe those guys didn't have that connective tissue, and Leon maybe were to lose to Jack Della Maddalena, right, that would potentially be a fight that could headline, would be a massive, massive fight. And even were Izzy to maybe lose that fight, that would be an acceptable note upon which to go out for him. You know, I don't know if Izzy has an appetite for the Sean Strickland rematch, right? But were he to lose to Du Plessis, maybe that would be one that Izzy would ask the UFC to try to get back, even though maybe we would not love that matchup necessarily based on the first meeting. But about Nassourdine Imavov, you're sort of suggesting to the masses that if a prime Adesanya faced a prime Imavov, and Nassourdine maybe hasn't even arrived at his prime, that Izzy would win that fight. So I know that's no knock on Imavov necessarily.
No,
but
100%. No, wait.
About his future, though. I mean, look what he just did.
Yeah, no, 100%. Look, that guy looked great. He looked great in his last fight. No, he's looking really good. You can't, in 1,000 years, I'm not trying to take anything away from. I said sometimes that's the way I look at it. Like with my guys, like, holy crow, he would have.
Right.
Nassourdine's not the guy, but I'm saying it could be other fights where that would apply better, because Nassourdine, he's been on the come up, and he's looking really good. What was his last fight? Cannonier? Was that the fight?
Brendan Allen, I believe.
Brendan Allen. Yeah. I mean, he's good, this guy. Really, really good what he's been doing. So, I don't know. I like it.
Yeah, I think a lot of it's timing, right? It's just like, I think Imavov's on the up, and you catch Adesanya at the right time, who's a little bit on a decline, and Imavov took advantage of it.
Yeah, Kenny, you can't keep going up.
No,
you know what I mean? Gravity's going to drag you down somewhere, and that's what I see happening.
Yeah,
I mean, I would maybe be inclined as a promoter to do Adesanya versus Shara Bullet, or Adesanya versus even Michael Venom Page, right? But MVP and Izzy seem like they're close, and Michael Venom Page is talking about 170 pounds. So there are things you can do.
But without a doubt.
You lose to Shara Bullet, for example, and you've lost 4 in a row. That is legacy impacting in some way, shape, or form. Maybe not for me, who still has him right below Anderson Silva as the second greatest middleweight champion of all time with respect to Chris Weidman and everyone else. But you know what I mean? There becomes a point of no return. I mean, Rashad Evans, I think, would love to affect change when it comes to his Wikipedia page. And I think that's why maybe he's fighting Rampage Jackson soon,
Yeah. And I think that, that's a great option. I think that would be a really fun fight. I think it's going to be, the onus is going to be on Izzy and saying, what's the cost benefit analysis here? This is a guy that just lost. What do I gain from fighting him? Besides the money, he does get paid though. There's that. So going to be interesting.
Yeah, look, Ken, it is. They get paid. They have sponsorships they don't want to lose. Right. You know what I mean? Like, you're getting a check for doing nothing every month. That's a big thing to give up. If I stop fighting, I'm not going to get that. So there's a million things that go into what's going on. It's not just about the fighting. So
that is true.
You got to figure it out.
So I thought long and hard as to whether or not I wanted to address Bryce Mitchell's comments over the weekend here on the Anik and Florian podcast. And by the way, thank you to everybody for joining us live here on YouTube. But just some filthy rhetoric coming out of Thug Nasty Bryce Mitchell, a guy that I have come to like and respect a lot. So I'm not going to go through his comments. You can certainly look them up if this is breaking news for you. Dana White responded at length on behalf of the UFC, and among what he said, Hitler is one of the most disgusting and evil human beings to ever walk the earth, and anyone that even tries to take an opposing position is a moron. That's the problem with the internet and social media. You provide a platform to a lot of dumb and ignorant people. Jan Blachowicz pushed out a series of tweets. I'm going to read these and get some thoughts from Kenny and Ray. So this is from former UFC light heavyweight champion Jan Blachowicz. Hey, Bryce Mitchell, since you are so good at research, I invite you to take a little educational tour. We'll start in Warsaw, which was nearly razed to the ground in 1945. You will see many memorial plaques commemorating the public executions of civilians. We'll take a walking tour of the ex-ghetto area. By the way, we will go to Palmyra, where the Nazis executed 1,700 people, including Olympic champion Janusz Kuzaczynski. I hope I'm not butchering his name. Then we'll go to Auschwitz, where 1 million people were murdered. You can reflect on each prisoner separately. I will also share a personal story because Waclaw, my grandfather's brother, was in this camp. Jan Bednarik, in turn, is my grandmother's brother who died in the Buchenwald camp. My grandfather was held in a German prisoner of war camp. I invite you to Poland to see all of this with your own eyes. We'll see if you still consider you-know-who to be a good guy. So my son, about a year ago, asked me who the worst person in the world was and if he could see a picture of that person. And I showed him a picture of Adolf Hitler. So, Ray, I guess I'll start with you. I'd imagine this crossed your brow over the weekend. What were your thoughts on all of this?
I mean, the guy's out of his fucking mind. I don't know. He wants to go bass fishing with Adolf Hitler. I mean, I don't know. I mean, can we find a way maybe to humor it? Look, what I'm hoping that it's just crazy talk, and you want freedom of speech. There's your example of it right there. He's gonna say what he's gonna say, but he's fucking balls to the wall, just mentally ill at this point. I just hope it ain't like CTE. You know what I mean? Like, I hope that's not playing into it with all of these guys, because you do see changes in the way they think. I mean, he was a kid at the gym. It probably was 8 years ago. I don't know how long ago it was, and he seemed like a really nice guy. And he is I think he's just confused, and maybe he has to be like educated on what's going on. But at this stage of the game in 2024, I mean, the stuff he's saying is just fucking nuts. I mean, I don't know. What are you gonna do? I mean, you think he's the only guy out there talking like that? You know what I mean? So it's not a good look for the MMA community. You could see how disgusted Dana White was. And I don't know. I don't know what you want me to say. Is the guy's a moron?
Kenny?
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, words matter. Sports leagues obviously are going to handle things differently. I believe that the NBA or the NFL would have suspended this athlete or fined this athlete. I understand that freedom of speech is something that is prioritized by the UFC. And even if he were to be consulted by Ari Emanuel, who's in charge of this whole thing, who is a Jewish man like I am, right? Who, maybe could have said, hey, man, you got to cut this guy. Like Dana White is not cutting Bryce Mitchell, but a lot to unpack here. KenFlo.
Yeah, we always joke around on the mat that the most dangerous land animal is a blue belt because they have just enough information to screw themselves. And I think that's
a good analogy.
That's kind of the problem is the internet. It's an interesting place in that, yes, there's a lot of dumb people, but you can get a lot of information from a lot of different sources, and in getting a little bit of information, you think you have the keys to the kingdom somehow, or I heard this and I know this, and so it's a dangerous place to be. When you think you're getting this special information or whatever it is, and you come to think a certain thing, it's unfortunate, and it seemed like Bryce was saying the right things, after what he said. Who knows if he was intoxicated or what was going on, or if there's some issue going on.
Kenny.
Ray.
Another good point.
Yeah, who knows? But it's unfortunate because, again, as athletes, the reality is that there are people that look up to you and are looking to hear what you have to say, and you do have an influence for better or worse, and hopefully Bryce can right the ship.
He seems sober to me, but
he seems Ray. What, John? What did he say? What'd you say?
Sober to me. I've spent a lot of time around him. He seems sober as a judge, but go ahead, Ray.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think we're reaching, but I do agree with Kenny. I've seen it, John, where I've told guys, don't do this, don't do that. They agree with me. And they go home, they start smoking. What do? The exact thing I told them not to do.
Right.
And it's definitely 100% weed related. I've had a couple examples of that, and these are guys that smoke a lot of weed. But so, he had to have the predilection, right?
Yeah. In no way is that an excuse.
Right.
In no way is that a valid excuse.
I think it enhanced the predilection that he always had.
Sure.
That's the scary part to me. No matter what, he went in the direction that he felt comfortable with, even if it was like a mistake in his head. So look, the guy's in a lot of trouble either way. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't think we didn't see the end of this, and we don't know what's going to happen. But he puts everybody. This is what sucks. He puts a lot of people in a real shitty position.
Well, right.
Just by being
And
like a stupid ass. You know what I mean? So
yeah, right.
don't
I
know,
have
man.
thought a lot about how sort of to handle the navigation that would be our next fighter meeting. Kyrie Irving was suspended for 8 games in 2022 by the NBA for some remarks that were deemed to be anti-Semitic, I believe, on Twitter or X. But all right, just wanted to address that briefly. So when you see a headline, Ray, and maybe you don't even see this, but I see this headline that Merab Dvalishvili and Petr Yan are going to coach opposite each other in a Russian reality fight series. And then I see another headline that Aljamain Sterling is going to replace the UFC's undisputed bantamweight champion Merab as a coach against Petr Yan. I know these guys aren't under your brow in New York. I know they're in Vegas, right? But do you know what exactly is going on here?
I got to tell you, I was going to make a call last night. I saw the thing with Aljo and Petr Yan with the Academy Award or whatever. But
Yeah.
Merab was in the gym the whole week.
Yeah.
And he didn't say anything I didn't know about, so I didn't even ask him about it. I was actually going to call Aljo and see what the hell was going on, because that was news to me. But,
No, Aljo's in Russia making $10K an hour doing this Russian
no,
reality.
he is in Russia, though.
No,
I don't even know. I don't even
No, I
know.
think he actually, if you want to know, is on vacation in Miami.
No, he's back.
He's
He's
down.
he's done with that. Yeah, that part I know.
Okay. Right,
but yeah, so it was but you want to get back to Merab. I mean, the guy just fought last week. The guy must have did 50 fucking rounds in the Jacani, just sparring people. They're laying on the floor. He's walking around like he's like a tiger on Valium, like he's just bored. So I'm telling you what I seen this way. I think he's actually crazy. I think the guy might be nuts at this point. Like, people want to explain the cardio, dude, the guy doesn't stop.
So much for that vacation, huh?
Nah, I'm saying in the gym every day, and I think I held pads for him once. Everything else was sparring. Just
what
sparring.
does the UFC PI say about what he puts on tape when they have him hooked up to all those metrics, right, Kenny? When they're have him on the paradigm. Yeah.
I don't think he goes into the PI, to be honest with you. I had a guy, there was a kid sitting there, he had K-tape on his knee. What they call it, K-tape?
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about,
Yeah.
Kenny? I go, Rob, you ever have that on your body? You ever see Merab walking around on his shoulder with the K-tape fucking walking around? Like, no, not happening.
He is the K-tape.
He's still got the scars on his shin. Like, how's your shin looking? Still looks like shit to me. Okay, perfect. It's absolutely perfect. Wow.
He has everyone in the fight game wondering what he is made of and how he can be so uniquely him in combat. It's just insane, right? Everybody's trying to psychoanalyze everything that he does because we've seen nothing like it. Like, I'm wondering aloud when I think about these otherworldly gas tanks. And I think back to Colby Covington saying, I knew when I was 8 years old on a soccer pitch that I had a third lung and I could outlast all these kids. Right.
Yeah,
and, I can look and see that my niece has a better gas tank than my daughter. Right. But like, what is he made of? What is science going to say when they finally cut Merab open?
I don't know, but he gets stronger as the rounds go on. That's 1,000,000%. And he's really becoming, I mean, he always was, but he's really becoming a thinking fighter. He knows exactly what's going on. Man, I put him in with a really good striker, heavier than him, and by the 5th round, that guy was laying on the floor. I mean, it's just, it just, and I didn't want to see the sparring because it could have been a total disaster. Luckily, everything worked out, but I just watched guy after guy. The only guy is Pumi Nakuda. Pumi's the only guy that keeps up with him.
Wow.
That's a fact.
You're listening, Nick Maynard?
Yeah.
Pumi Nakuda is the only guy that keeps up with Merab Dvalishvili.
Yeah, these guys are at the bar. They don't care. They care about the next drink that's coming in. That's about it.
Well, let's hope 2025 is the year that Pumi Nakuda becomes a UFC fighter and gets that badge. That
we'll see what happens.
But
yeah, he's the only guy that is not laying on. I mean, I'm talking laying on the floor.
Yeah,
he's the only guy.
All right, let me get you out of here on this. Have Patchy Mix or Tatiana Suarez crossed your wake at all? Have you met either of those people? I know Patchy Mix is a primary training partner for Merab Dvalishvili. Do you know them at all or no?
I've met him. I don't.
Okay.
I wouldn't consider I know him. No.
Tatiana Suarez competes for the world championship this weekend. Finally, would be one word that I think would be appropriate, right? She's 11-0. She has dealt with a lot in her life. She was chasing Olympic gold, was diagnosed with thyroid cancer, right? And here she is fighting for the world championship, favored at DraftKings Sportsbook right now to beat the vaunted Zhang Weili. I would like to get a prediction from you, Ray Longo, who leaves Sydney, Australia as the UFC women's strawweight champion and new.
I'm going to go with Tatiana Suarez. I think even her, relationship with Patchy Mix has to be a big help to her. He's got great submission. You know what I'm saying? So I think besides that, her wrestling is awesome. She's undefeated. She's faced a lot of good people. I think she's ready to go, and I think she's going to make up for whatever the Olympic thing was with the thyroid cancer. She's going to do it. I'm going with Tatiana. I think she's tough I think she's going to be a real handful.
Seems like the money's coming in on Tatiana Suarez, and I think a lot of people in the fight game, like Ray, are going to fall on that side. I always think it's going to be interesting when it comes to the strength equation once they hit the mat, who will actually be stronger. You really don't know how an athlete feels until you're in there with them. We'll get all of KenFlo's thoughts on that a little bit later. Ray Longo, before we go, Dricus Du Plessis, about a 2-1 favorite over Sean Strickland for the rematch. Who do you like?
Wow. I'm going to say I think it's going to be the exact same fight it was the first time. I don't know who the decision's going to go to. I think the decision could easily went to Strickland, but let's see. It's going to be I think it's definitely going to be a decision, and it's going to be a very close fight, as was the first one.
Okay. We won't make you make a pick on that one. We hope you have a great day and a better evening. And wheels up for me here in a couple hours. So we'll talk to you next week.
Yeah, safe trip. And let me give a shout out to all my guys at the gym. They fought their asses off on Saturday night. Everybody won. We had one guy that lost a split decision, which I would have given him the fight. So just a great group of young amateurs coming up. It was everybody just knocked it out of the park. What a great night we had at the space. And unfortunately, Aunt Sarah, Matt's wife, lost a split decision, which everybody thought she won for a championship at 41. Was her goal too. Was just a feel good night. Couple of losses, but for the most part, everybody knocked it out of the park. Fought with heart and passion. That's all you want. And that's it. Great night.
Amazing. Well, congratulations on that. And we look forward to seeing your shining face actually in prime time. We're going in prime time, I think 5:30, 6 p.m. next Monday night when I get back from Sydney. So depending on your schedule, we'd love to have you in prime time.
I'm in.
All right.
I'm in.
Have a good day, man. We appreciate you.
Enjoy the fights. Have a safe trip. Kenny, I hope everything's going good with Steve Lee.
Yes, sir. It is.
We are moving forward.
Yes, we are. We are moving forward. I can't wait to see it.
I love it, man.
Promotion for the Kenny Florian seminar in Garden City, New York at Longo's MMA. Ray, get the fuck out of here, all right?
And John, I'm hoping you could join us.
I will not be there unless I can. If I can watch, I'll go. I'm not going to train.
You're only 20 minutes away. I'll talk to you later.
Sounds good. My man, Ray Longo. Ray Longo Minute with us for a part of this show, I should say, every week here on the Anik and Florian podcast. All right. It is now time. Get your Cuervo shot glasses ready. First shot of the fight weekend brought to you by Cuervo. So we did this for UFC 311, right? And a snarky commenter suggested that Anik had water in the shot glass because I didn't wince, right? So here we are. It's 12:01 p.m. Eastern. This is my Cuervo Traditional Cristalino, right? So yeah, my bottle could be filled with water, but I'm going to fill the shot right now and show you. And I'm going to fill it to the brim. I'm going to do a heavy pour that they don't give you in the bar. Okay.
I can't wait to mix this with coffee. It's going to be great.
Best of luck to me packing my suitcase under the influence. But here we go. UFC 312 fight week. We just got Longo's predictions. Here we go, KenFlo. Cuervo, first shot of the fight weekend.
Cheers.
Woo. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Jason, I'm not going to chase you with coffee. That might not be good.
Don't tempt me with a good time. All right, we are buzzing now. First shot of the fight weekend is in the can, courtesy of Cuervo. And now, after a week away, we are very happy to have another star of this program back. Let's get to the main event challenge. Oh, I thought I was getting my main event challenge fancy drop today. I put it in the run.
We're not getting the drop?
italics, everything else, but we're not getting the drop. What we are getting.
It's the main event challenge. Anik.
The time is most definitely now.
Florian.
I finish fights. I'm going to do everything possible to win.
The main event challenge. The Jon Anik and Kenny Florian podcast.
All right, main event challenge time, and we are rejoined by Big Gun Brian Petrie. And my brother, there is so much love for you in the MMA community and on these airwaves. I'm not trying to get you all emotional here, but we are live on YouTube, and we did dedicate last week's show to the memory of your amazing mother, Barb Petrie. I know this is challenging for you to be back today. I know you were sort of weighing this decision and being with us for a pay-per-view week, but, you know, I hope you felt the love from this podcast family of which you are a major part.
I mean, I couldn't believe the outpouring respect. Obviously, everyone on this show sending me messages, and then the comments from the dedication to my mother. I read all of them. I mean, it really, truly uplifts you. My family was always small. It's now getting smaller. So seeing these strangers essentially comment really good, words and positive affirmations to me was just incredible. I mean, I literally took it all in, and I have a weird perspective. My father is dealing with this a little harder, obviously, and my mother was the strongest woman I've ever known and gave me the life I gave you. I could sit here and tell you stories for 2 hours of the reason what she had to sacrifice to get me to where I need to be. And but I have so many good memories of my mom. All of them are good. We never fought. We never had a falling out. We never yelled at each other. We were best friends, and I get to hold those on forever. So as much as she's gone and it sucks, she was fighting for a long time, truly, and really hasn't been herself for a few years. So now she gets to rest peacefully, and I get to have all these memories that no one can take away from me. And not everybody can say that about their mother, unfortunately. So I feel very truly honored and privileged that she was my mother. And again, I feel privileged and honored that I'm part of this podcast and got all the flowing of love, which was very reciprocated on my end. And I really, really, truly, bottom of my heart, my family as well, appreciate everything. So thank you guys.
My man. Of course. Well, it's good to have you back, and your wife Erica's tribute was lovely as well to her late mother-in-law. All right, we're gonna liven things up, or I guess lighten things up a little bit with a pronunciation of the week. And I am getting an opportunity to pronounce this man's name for the first time this weekend. What a challenge it is! It's 9 syllables. He is a flyweight competing in the first fight of the night, taking on Hyun Song Park. We're going to let Brian Petrie take a stab at this. I did send you the file.
Yes.
And at this point, I've said this name about 100 times, so I feel pretty confident. But what do you have for us on this young flyweight hopeful?
Yeah, so we've kind of done this one before. I'm not sure if it was official or not, but Yam Jargal Temdembrel is like basically what I got. That's
not
it.
bad.
That's not bad. Yeah.
So my twin brother Jason Anik doesn't like this segment. I brought it back this week for Niem Jargal Tumendembrel, okay? Because he might be the champion one day, and that's why I'm forced to say Tumendembrel a million times before I get to the arena, because if this guy produces a knockout, I got to be able to say Tumendembrel, and maybe they repurpose that audio because the guy becomes a fucking UFC champion. So that's why, perhaps too seriously at times, we take this stuff very seriously. So let us hear from Niem Jargal Tumendembrel, if we could, Cody Merrill.
Niem Jargal Tumendembrel. Niem Jargal Tumendembrel.
Jargal.
That's crazy. That's nuts.
So my phonetics suggest you're emphasizing the last syllable, Niem Jargal, and then Tumendembrel. So my man Bruce Buffer will call me on Friday or Saturday. And he'll say, how do we pronounce Niem Jargal Tumendembrel? And I'll be like, my man, we got to practice 100 times so we don't need phonetics on Saturday. So
and then he'll say something else when he announces. No, it's
all right. We have another file, by the way, later coming up in the main event challenge for Justin Badman Tafa's opponent. For now, though, main event challenge, it is UFC 312. Du Plessis versus Adesanya 2. 8 selections from the fellas, of course, as this is a pay-per-view offering. And we begin with a prelim in the bantamweight division. UFC debut for the older brother of featherweight champion Ilia Topuria, the 29-year-old Alexander Topuria. 5-1, arrives in the octagon here as a -410 favorite against the short-notice fellow newcomer Colby Thickness, who comes back +320. BP, talk to us through the 135ers, if you.
Oh man, listen, this is a really tough one because first off, Colby thickness, the slickness thickness. I mean, I just want to pick him based on that and the fact that he's a high, plus 320 underdog against a Topuria, who this guy's have fought since like 2023, and he's fought bums. Nobody's, guys. I mean, one guy with a winning record who he fought last time out, ground and pounding him, that guy's currently 3-2, right? But other than that, he really hasn't fought anybody, but he moves and he looks and he fights similar to his brother, who we know is a fucking stud. He's also in the gym every single day with this guy, presumably with that great camp in Spain. And I just think he might be a little too much man for Colby. I think Colby's a little light in the ass. I think I've seen his fights. I don't think he's very strong. I think his jiu-jitsu's okay. I think his striking at times can be a little worrisome for me. He does have some good kicks, but they're a little lazy. Topuria, if he's got some of his boxing against brothers, is going to make this a pretty quick night for himself. However, I do think he'll go for some takedowns, do some ground and pound. He's the bigger, thicker guy here. I hate the number on -410 against a guy who's never really fought anybody. Someone's got to be a Peyton in this family. Someone's going to be an Eli. There's no way we have two Peytons, right? But we might have two Peyton Mannings. So I'm going to go Topuria -410. I hate the number. I'm not going to play this, but that's going to be my official pick.
All right, nicely laid out as usual from the chief capper, Brian Petrie. Topuria, KenFlo's won 3 in a row, BJJ black belt, ton of grappling experience. I mean, say what you will about his relative lack of MMA experience, but a lot of grappling and combat sports experience. On the other side, thickness, longtime trainer partner, as mentioned, of Alexander Volkanovski. He's undefeated, 7-0, also BJJ black belt, national BJJ champion, training under Joe Lopez at Freestyle MMA for 12 years since he was 13, and really has been a right-hand man of Alexander Volkanovski since he was 18. Here he steps in, replacing Cody Haddon. Your thoughts?
Listen, this might be controversial. I don't think thickness deserves this shot. Topuria has gone through Volkanovski and Holloway back-to-back. It's not Ilya? It's not?
Yeah.
Okay, forget it. Listen, I think it's going to be interesting, man. I think there's some truth to what Brian's talking about. I think Topuria, though, is still getting a good matchup here against Colby Thickness. I think this could be a good fight for Topuria to come out here in his UFC debut. I know it was kind of delayed a little bit, and also, they had to find someone else to kind of jump in there, and I just think Topuria is most likely going to be better everywhere. And similar to how Ilya Topuria, his younger brother, came up, he got the right fights at the right time. That is so important. For the most part, he actually had a very tough debut against a man. I think he was only 19 years old when he debuted against another guy. But other than that, he's looked good and showed some really good skills. Even in that fight, he showed a lot of toughness. So I think Topuria should win this by finish here against Thickness. Yeah, another Topuria in the UFC. Pretty cool.
I'm just going to be sitting there thinking about thickness jokes, right? Oh, it's right. The thickness. Look, Colby, thickness. Can you imagine if he knocks a motherfucker out? Be like the thickness.
Dude, so if he's got a sister or something, or like his mom, he's probably had a lot of fights. So I think
for sure.
Yeah, Colby could spoil someone's play.
What do you do if you're obese? Last name Thickness. What do you do if you're obese? Surname Thickness. You probably lose weight. I don't know.
He had a heavy set kid in our class that his last name was Ham, and he was morbidly obese that couldn't really walk. His last name was, I forget his first name, but that was pretty brutal on him. He's also an asshole to everybody too. You don't want to make fun of him, but he was an asshole to everybody. It's like, buddy, there's so many things I can say right now, but I'm not. I'm a nice guy. Right. Keep it moving. Right.
First name Maple, middle name Glazed. Maple, Glazed,
Honey Ham.
Yeah. All right, at lightweight. Team Alpha Males, Vyacheslav Barshov, -135, taking on Tom Nolan. Far easier to pronounce, +114. So Barshov coming off a win last August, Brian, against Hamas Yontop. Gosh, man, these names, right?
Mm-hmm.
James Lontop, Hamas Yontop. I mean, Jesus fucking Christ. We'll eliminate the pronunciation of the week, though, and we'll just mail it in, right?
Good. Hey, yeah, let's do it.
Niem Jargal, Tumen Dembarel will never fight for the world title, right? Let's just wing it this week.
Sure.
All right. Vyacheslav Barshov, -135, taking on Big Train Nolan, another product of Dana White's Contender Series. He's only 24, born March 8th in the year 2000. He fought 3 times, Bry, last year, won his last 2. Your thoughts on Nolan here versus Vyacheslav Slavaklaus Barshov?
I like when guys with difficult names have nicknames and they kind of go by the nickname. So Slavaklaus is right in my wheelhouse. You know what I mean? This dude likes to go to war. That's what he does. His takedown offense is Not very good, but he's going against a fellow striker in Tom Nolan who wants to strike. And listen, I got the backwards hat on today because I mean fucking business. Your boy's been grinding while grieving. You know what I mean? A double G week. Not many people do that. Slava Claus was going to be my pick. However, he went against a long, lanky guy in Chase Hooper, and Chase Hooper put him down. Chase Hooper put him on skates for a couple times. You're going against Tom Nolan, who's got that great up knees, a very tall, long guy. Slava Claus has to deal with a lot of range here. He might be the one that wants to wrestle. Not really sure. However, what throws me pause, what doesn't really load me up on Tom Nolan, even though he is going to be my pick, was his Alex Reyes fight. He couldn't get Alex Reyes out of there, and Alex Reyes had a long history of injuries and has been away for a while. Couldn't get him out of there. That to me lacks confidence in playing this number at plus money. However, I do like dogs. I like a dog shot here. I'm going to take Tom Nolan. I think he gets it done. I think he can actually finish Slava Claus on the feet as well. If he's got some good submissions, we might be looking for a club and sub, but give me Tom and Nolan.
KenFlo, Vyacheslav Barshov, minus 135. Tommy Nolan, plus 114. Your thoughts?
Yeah, not going to spend a whole lot of time here on this one, but I think that Borshov is going to have the better hands, and Nolan's going to have the better kicking game. Nolan's got to keep him on the outside, and Borshov has a good shot if he's able to get on the inside and land some shots. We have seen Nolan get caught in the past in that range, so he's got to be careful there. But when you get a fight that's this close, and when you get a guy as lanky as Nolan, I like Nolan's shot there. I think it's worth the underdog pick.
All right, featured prelim in the featherweight division, Gabriel Santos, minus 230, for Jack Jenkins, plus 190. Santos trains under Davi Hamosh. He is a former LFA champion, jiu-jitsu brown belt, good finishing skills. Perhaps to the surprise of some, Bry, he is a healthy minus 230 favorite here on the road against Melbourne's Far Jack Jenkins. Who do you love, Brian Petrie?
Shocked at this line. Absolutely. I had to double, triple check all the books. Shocked. I'm Jack Jenkins all day, babe. I mean, he's got one slip up in the UFC, and that's against the fucking pit bull, Chepe Mariscal. I mean, Chepe Mariscal is beating everybody. You can't slow that guy down. Gabriel Santos is 1-2 in the UFC. Yeah, he looked good against Damon Namo. We got put out. Yeah, he looked good against Laurent Murphy, but he lost. And he beat Yinza his last time out, who's really done nothing, right? I'm not knocking the guy. The guy's got obviously phenomenal skills. He's here for a reason, but Jack Jenkins, really good leg kicks, really athletic, really good movement. My only problem with Jenkins is when he gets a guy hurt, and this isn't the case for every fighter, but when he gets a guy hurt, instead of choosing your shots on the feet and really trying to take him on the feet, he goes back to what he wants to do, and that's take you down. And Herbie Burns, his last time out, Herbie the Love Boat, you could have taken that guy out quite quickly instead of the third round, but he kind of played with his food a little bit. He's done that in the past as well. That's a little bit of experience that you need to build along the way. I think this guy could be a real killer. I think he's going to kick Santos' legs up. I think he's going to stuff some takedowns. I think we're going to get a nice little underdog shot here at plus 190. I'm all over Jack Jenkins, baby, who looks exactly like Benson Boone, by the way, if you guys know who that is. I mean, the guy, they're identical twins, but give me Jack Jenkins.
Kenny, Jenkins has been featured on a lot of big cards, ABC and pay-per-view only. This will be his fourth appearance on a numbered card in his 5 UFC starts. To Brian's point, 3-1 out of the chute to begin his UFC career. Last win was August 17th of 2024. Jenkins plus 190 or Santos minus 230 for you?
I want you, I need you, my God. Oh, sorry. That song's in my head now.
Yeah.
My daughter's been singing that for the last couple of weeks. All right, so yeah, I have a little bit of a different take. I think Jack Jenkins certainly has a lot of potential. There's no question about it. Athletically, I think he's a little bit of a notch above Gabriel Santos. However, I think Santos has the better overall game. Jenkins sometimes doesn't make the best of decisions, as you kind of alluded to during fights. And that is a concern for me because Santos tends to make good decisions. And I don't see a huge disparity on the feet, in my opinion. I think Santos can actually hang with him there. I think he might be the more potent striker in regards to power. Jenkins, very athletically overall, like athletic overall, but I don't see him with like that one shot kind of put you on your butt kind of power. It's possible, but he moves pretty well, but tends to get to give up takedowns at inopportune times, and that's where Santos can really expose him. Not only just by like stealing rounds, but I think getting superior position and maybe wearing him out in those positions. I also think he's going to be a submission threat as well. So give me the Brazilian Gabriel Santos. Nice. I think this is a kid with a lot of potential. I like him. His fight against Laurent Murphy, I think, was a nice kind of hint or tease of how good this could be. So that was a split decision loss that was close, but give me Santos.
Nicely done. By the way, Niam Jargal, Tumen Dembarel's nickname, Bry, is Art of Knockout. So it's not like you can leverage that at the end of a fight. Be like, Art of Knockout, living up to the moniker, right?
Yeah, right.
No,
his nickname's even long. I mean, come on,
Dembarel. Yeah, Cody, that's funny shit, right? Cody writing LMAO, yeah. Art of Knockout, living up to his nickname. No, you need to fucking memorize Tumen Dembarel, right?
You have to.
And oftentimes when I get on any sort of pronunciation podium, I'm arrogant, and yet all I'm trying to do is right by the fighters. Truly, like I'm really not looking for friends, trying to do right by the fighters, and maybe break 80 as a golfer one time in my life before I die.
Listen, as a guy who got his last name butchered by like substitute teachers his whole life, I appreciate you going, I'm going to give this guy respect. He's fighting. I'm going to get his name fucking right. I used to get Petrie, Petrie. So it's nice when people get their shit right. You know what I mean? And you're first class when it comes to that, Johnny.
Well, thank you, buddy. And maybe I am leveraging my podcast unfairly to practice Tumen Dembarel. So let us get to the pay-per-view main card. Opener in the welterweight division, the Celtic Kid Jake Matthews, minus 218. Francisco Prado is plus 180. So how about this research, Kenny? And we'll lead with you here. So Prado is still only 22. He has 3 UFC fights under his belt. Jake Matthews fought 7 times in the UFC before his 23rd birthday. And he still has such an appetite for MMA knowledge and improvement. You got to respect what Jake Matthews has done. Here he takes on a Prado who hasn't competed since a unanimous decision loss to Daniel Zellhuber. That was all the way back in February of 2024. So nearly a year away for Prado, KenFlo, taking on Jake Matthews here in the welterweight division.
Did we call Jake Matthews' debut? Yes. Yeah.
Nice.
Very nice. Very nice. Brian, by the way, you should have heard John's DraftKings read. It was just money, like the small print that everyone screws up. The guy killed it. All right. So I think this is a really good fight for Jake Matthews, who has a ton of experience, as you talked about, John. Prado, it's kind of like I think of the movie, is it Office Space, where it's like, what exactly do you do here? And Prado, listen, he's good, he's fine, but I'm just not sure where his strength lies besides his toughness. Like, he's a really tough guy, but there's no skills where I'm like, wow, you got to watch out for that. Not against someone like Matthews. I just don't see him being a tremendous threat there. I think Matthews is going to be a little bit better, a little more powerful on the feet. And again, this is a fight at welterweight. Prado, I think his best weight class is 155, and it's not like he's big in that weight class there. And I'm not trying to poop on him. I'm just trying to be honest here with the Anik and Florian podcast listeners here. So I like Matthews, and I like Matthews pretty big.
So we have some sound bites on the board, right? Flight of the Conchords here.
You're my wingman. I need you. We got it all. The girls love us. We're like wham.
Right. And then we got like planes, trains, and automobiles.
Because I'm the real article. What you see is what you get.
And at some point, I'm going to figure out which button I'm going to replace with. What exactly would you say you do here?
That's the accurate one.
Yeah.
So working that into his mixed martial arts analytics as only he could. But Jake Matthews, yes, right? Like continuing to evolve despite 20 UFC fights, 13-7 after the win over Phil Rowe last June at UFC 302. So, Bri, I didn't find any Francisco Prado injury nor any bout cancellations. You never know why a guy might take a year off, and there is developmental time in theory that comes with that. What are your thoughts on this main card opener here at welterweight? You like Matthews the favorite or Prado the dog?
I think Prado takes the insurance claims to the insurance adjuster. He's a people person. That's what he does here. Listen, Prado, he's your typical Argentine fighter. He is, we all can praise how tough they are. There's just a lack of well-roundedness there. They obviously like to stand up and bang. That's what he did with Zellhuber. My thought with the Zellhuber fight is he got dinged up a little bit, and you're like, listen, you're young. Let's rest the brain. Let's rest everything here, kid. You know what I mean? You were in a heavy fight. Let's get better, right? And I'm sure he's going to come out a little bit better. Stand-up is still pretty good. He has that power. Most Argentine fighters, even on the boxing side, they always just come with power. But Jake Matthews, he's a guy, man, I really, really rooted for. He's been really up and down in the UFC, had some good runs, and I really think that some of his performances, if he can just duplicate that every fight night, which I know is easier said than done, This is a guy we're talking about in this division, right? He's 30, going to be 31 this year. Foot on the gas, bud. Foot on the gas. You've been in the UFC forever. Foot on the gas. Show some wins. I think this is a winnable fight here. I think the UFC is doing him a favor by giving him Prado in Australia in front of his hometown crowd. Good-looking kid. Really showcase fight, too, because if he wants to slang and bang, Prado's there. I actually think Jake Matthews is going to take him down, probably take a neck. I think Jake Matthews' chokes are pretty underrated. And I think Prado is going to get slept here in this fight by a submission. So give me Jake Matthews. I'm with Kenny. I'm pretty big on him as well. I like this spot for him.
Got to think when we get to place your bets later that these guys might be putting down some coin on Jake Matthews.
Maybe.
You know, you sounded like Brendan Schaub when you said foot on the gas, bud. I think my favorite word that Schaub utters is bud. He's like, you got to be betting that, bud.
Does he that?
All right. Next up on the main card, light heavyweight division, Rodolfo Bellato, -162. Jimmy Crute comes back +136. The Bendigo bomber, Jimmy Crute, contemplated retirement, took a break, now returns for the first time since UFC 290. That was a loss to Alonzo Menafield, July 2023. So 18 months or so out of the octagon, Bry, for Crute. Now returning against the 12-2 Rodolfo Bellato, who also has been out a while. Brian Petrie, who do you like at 205, kid?
Yeah, I thought my brain was playing tricks on me. I had to look this up. I was like, I could have swore Jimmy Crute laid the gloves down in the octagon and made a whole thing. Now he's back. He's still a young man or whatever, but, he's just, I feel like, there was a quote saying he had to find his love for fighting. I get that. When you're fighting for so long in your 20s, you get a little burnt out, and especially when you're losing and you're losing the way like he did with Anthony Smith, where his leg just got taken from him, and the Alonzo Menafield performances, which were just absolute words. I mean, taking a shot from that guy's going to take a couple years off your career for sure. But Jimmy the Brute Crute, this dude, I think, has some skills, but I just don't know if he can put it in together in a 3-round fight. He's good in round 1, and Bellato, who I thought, I didn't get familiar with this guy again. I thought, here's a guy who just comes out and knocks everybody out, right? He's actually really well-rounded. He actually has some real skills on the mat as well. His only kryptonite is Vitor Petrino. He can't get by that guy. He's been knocked out by him twice. Other than that, he's looked really good against everyone he's fought. I like Bellato here. I like the low number on him too, at -162 over Jimmy Crute. I know Jimmy's going to have the fans behind him. I like the layoff to get healthy. I don't know exactly what he's doing, if he's mixing anything up. I know he didn't come to America or anything. I mean, you don't have to come to America to anything. Tons of gyms over in Australia, but I have questions, right? And I'm not willing to play the plus money on Jimmy Crute where there's other dogs on the card. So give me Bellato at -162. That's a nice little even number there, or a medium number that you can throw in a parlay and cash out big. So I like Bellato.
I think that's a rational handicap. Bellato out of Rio de Janeiro trains under Feijão Cavalcante, KenFlo strength and conditioning with the famed Rogério Camões. Lost season 6 Dana White Contender Series to Vitor Petrino. Rebounded on season 7. Makes good on the UFC debut. Was supposed to fight May of 2024. Pulled out due to injury. Ends his year-plus layoff here and does so on pay-per-view against Jimmy Crute, who doesn't have a nickname. You can call him the Brute, the Bendigo Bomber. Either way, he's the underdog this weekend. KenFlo, we need a pick.
Yeah, so I think the pick on this one is that it probably won't go the distance. I think you should bet the under on this one. These are two kamikaze pilots going at it, as far as I'm concerned. Both of these guys want to be killed or want the kill. And I think that it's hard to determine which of these guys it's going to be. If I had a lean, though, I think Bellato. I just think he's a little bit more of a survivor. He has shown his gameness in the past. He's tough as nails, as is Jimmy Crute, but I think maybe Bellato should get it done here, but don't expect this one to go the distance.
All right, next up, featured bout at heavyweight, Talison Teixeira, -155, taking on Justin Bad Man Tafa, +130. Now, I try to lean into the fun of my job, even though it is intensive, but I will say when Justin Tafa fights, the opportunity to potentially drop a bad man on a microphone is really invigorating. Talison Teixeira, right? We have the audio file. We're going to play this for you folks. Some of you might remember former New York Yankees first baseman Mark Teixeira, or former UFC light heavyweight champion Glover Teixeira, right? Sure. So I was listening to the file, and indeed it is Teixeira. So I don't know exactly what we're going to go with this weekend, but Cody, can you rack that and hit that for me?
Talison Teixeira. Talison Teixeira.
I don't think that's him, incidentally.
That's not his voice.
Yeah,
that's
Teixeira.
I hope that's not his voice.
Anyway, he's 7-0 coming up on the UFC debut. Punched his ticket with a knockout of Arthur Lopez on the Contender Series last September. Tafa's UFC tested. There's no doubt. He's also been tested by circumstance of late. A forgettable 2024 for him, BP. Twice had to pull out of fights due to injury. Was 0-1 on the year. Still just 31. I mean, you know the Tafa gang's going to be out in full force representing Brisbane and everything else, but he is the underdog here against the UFC rookie Thaleson Teixeira. Which way you going, BP?
I'm so glad I'm not going to say the Brazilian's name to butcher it right now because I'm all over the dog, baby.
A dog. We don't need no meows. We don't need no cats. We need more dogs.
Justin Tafa's a dog here, baby. The bad man coming. Listen, Teixeira, or there you go. I butchered already. Him on the Contender Series, he's 7'10", not really 6'7", but he fights like the typical tall guy with no defense. And he was getting clipped in that fight and surviving, and he's a tough dude. He's got good striking himself. He's not quite a sniper like I would want my tall fighters to be. He sometimes engages when guys get close, and if Justin Tafa gets close, sleep city, you're going to get put to sleep, bub. Quick nap for you. And I like Tafa here in this spot. I think in front of his hometown crowd, yes, he's been inconsistent, everything like that. He's going against a fellow guy who's going to want to strike. I think Tafa maybe will be able to stop some of his takedowns considering he's so tall, unless this guy's got a wicked takedown game, which I have not seen on tape. I like Tafa. I like Tafa big on the dog money as well. Him by knockout round 1. I'm going to play that as well. Just get all the kind of goodies out there.
KenFlo featured offering here at heavyweight. Thaleson Teixeira minus 155. Justin Badman Tafa plus 130. Who do you like?
Thaleson Teixeira. Okay, let's see. Gosh, this is tricky. I think Brian makes a great point. Justin Tafa on the inside is going to be a problem, especially for a guy like Teixeira. Now, I think that Teixeira has the length at 6'7", and the striking for that matter on the outside to keep Tafa on the outside. I also think if he does find that Tafa is breaking that range and getting on the inside, I think he could always mix things up and really expose Tafa's ground game. That's where we see Tafa really get exposed, because there's no question that Teixeira is going to be the better grappler. That is clear. Does he have the takedowns, though, to get it there? That is the question. I'm not so sure. Teixeira likes to bang, and that could be a big mistake here against Tafa. I'm gonna lean towards the Brazilian. I'm a very biased here for Brazilians. All main card long here, but yeah, give me Teixeira.
So my twin brother Jason and I at Boston Anik have the same DNA, which means that when Kenny starts in the Brazilian Portuguese with that English Brazilian Portuguese, Jay and I have the same appetite for it, which is to say insatiable, and we could just listen to you do it all show long. Yeah. So when you start that way and then you give a pick, I heard nothing of what you said. So I'll listen back to that in preparation for the paper. It wasn't important. It's all good. Main event for the Strawweight Championship. KenFlo, lead us off if you would. Zhang Weili, minus 110. Tatiana Suarez, minus 110. This was a pick 'em when I sent you guys the odds. I will say we're live on YouTube right now. Tatiana Suarez is the minus 118 betting favorite. Put that in your pipe. Smoke it, whatever you want to do with it. Essentially a pick 'em. We expect two-way action right up until fight time. I wouldn't be surprised, as I have said on OddsShark, if we get some real late money on Zhang Weili, especially at an underdog price from a whale out there. KenFlo, Suarez 11-0. Last win against Jessica Andrade, August 2023. On the other side, 4 straight wins for Zhang Weili, the future Hall of Famer. Other than the 2 losses for Zhang Weili against Rose Namajunas in 2021, she's been untouchable since her pro debut in 2013, which was a 2-round, 10-minute fight. Zhang Weili's the betting underdog this weekend as Tatiana Suarez tries to wrest away the title. Kenny Florian, who do you like?
This is interesting. I did a lot of tape study for this one. Zhang Weili athletically is just different than a lot of fighters in the UFC. She is so gifted. And she could do a lot inside the octagon now. Why? Because she's been working on a lot of different aspects of her game. I think that she's going to have the advantage with her speed on the feet and with her, I guess, comfort in trading, especially in the pocket. Where she needs to be careful, though, is up against that cage and on her back against someone like Tatiana Suarez, who can make your life absolutely miserable. I watched the fight against Yan Xiaonan, her and Zhang Weili, and I noticed that when Weili would get in trouble, or when she was a little bit hesitant on her feet, because I did think she looked a little bit more vulnerable on her feet than she has in other fights. And a lot of that had to do with Yan Xiaonan and how good she is. But something seemed a little off with Weili, whether there's an injury or maybe she's slowing down a little bit, but she seemed a little bit off. But because she's such a great mixed martial artist and athlete, she could mix things up and look for takedowns. That's not going to be an option for here against Tatiana Suarez, who's going to be the better takedown artist here. And for me, that's going to be a big time problem. Suarez, you know exactly what she's going to do, and you can't stop it. Similar to a Khabib Nurmagomedov. And Suarez, she has the length as well. So she could kind of give Weili a little bit of problems on the outside. So I like Tatiana Suarez here. I think there's some very good value here for Suarez, who I think a lot of people don't know about because of her injuries. She hasn't been as consistent the last couple of years. But if you watch her early fights, man, she was an absolute juggernaut. I think we'll see that juggernaut back here in the UFC. Give me Tatiana Suarez.
Gosh, Ray Longo, Kenny Florian, both picking Tatiana Suarez. I don't have to text Chael Sonnen to know he's going to fall on that side as well. Brian Petrie, the floor is yours.
If you go up back and search my Twitter, you will find that I have said on numerous occasions Tatiana Suarez will fight for the title and be champion. I think she is that good. I love her fiance, boyfriend, husband. I'm not sure what their entanglement is. Patchy Mix, he's very good. Since they've aligned, her submissions have gotten better. Her ground game has gotten better. They're training very, very well. However, pulling to Kenny Florian here, hit you with the however. 10 fights in, only 10 fights. And a lot of injury time off against, Zhang Weili, who I think I hold to the highest standards and is a killer and has really transitioned to be a grappler in the last few fights. She landed 6 takedowns for Zhang Weili, right? Still landed over 100 strikes, but 6 takedowns, really controlling from the top. She really worked on the grappling because she lost the grappling to Rose in the second fight, which was very close, but she's really worked on it. That's not really going to work against Tatiana here. The striking's going to have to come back. That killer instinct, that killer, I'm going to knock you out. I got power. I have speed's going to have to come back against Tatiana because Tatiana's going to grapple. She can strike. She's got long-range weapons for this division. But at some point, I think fights and experience matter. Tatiana going 5 rounds has me worried. She can win the first couple rounds, but Zhang Weili can win the later half of the rounds and maybe even get a finish if Tatiana completely gasses. I don't think she's going to gas because she's a caliber athlete that is going to be ready. But I think this might be, and this is surprising myself because I love Tatiana Suarez. I think this might be a little too much right now. I want to see more from Tatiana Suarez. So give me Ann Still. Give me Zhang Weili. And I like her that she's going to be the underdog as well. That's going to be a bet I will be placing.
I think if you're a whale better and there is a plus number next to Zhang Weili, you're going to have to at least take a long, hard look. And I don't know the extent to which experience is going to factor into the outcome, but gosh, if there were any advantage for Zhang Weili, the championship experience in the UFC, if it's not going to pay dividends on this night, maybe it never would. All right, middleweight championship rematch. How good is this? This time the red corner belongs to Dricus Du Plessis, the minus 205 favorite in defense of his title here against the plus 170 underdog Sean Strickland. DDP Kenny absolutely surging after the successful title defense against Israel Adesanya. Strickland, of course, on the other side, did fight in the interim, dominated Paulo Costa over 5 rounds. Could not have finished that fight any stronger than he did. Feels like we need finality in this little rivalry. Perhaps we get it at UFC 312 this weekend. Kenny, who wins the UFC middleweight championship in Sydney?
Yeah, well, it was a great time calling the fight with you for UFC Fight Pass and going over, round by round what happened in their first meeting. Anytime I see that, I'm looking for some kind of strong argument from the guy who lost to tell me that something's going to be different. And while there are adjustments that can be made, I still think that Strickland fought a great fight. I think that DDP turned it up at the right time. And I also think that DDP, because of those 5 rounds, if you can almost see it as a continuation of that fight, that DDP will be that much more prepared heading into round 1 and will prevent, in theory, Strickland from getting that same lead that he experienced first time out. So I think that DDP understood that he can't be the guy going backwards. He's got to get off to a good start, get those leg kicks going early, and also look for those takedowns to try to tire out Strickland like he did the first time. Strickland has a tremendous gas tank when he's moving forward, when he's comfortable, when he's leading the dance, and when he's putting together his combinations. When he's backing up and he's forced to wrestle, and he needs to, rally back round after round. He shows heart, but he will get tired. DDP tends to get stronger as the fight goes on. I think he's also the more versatile fighter. He has more things that he can rely on in his game that he can pull out of his tool belt to make things a little bit more difficult for Sean Strickland. No question, last fight was really close. I thought it was pretty clear for DDP, if I'm being honest. I think he rallied back the last 3 rounds. Strickland is a tremendous fighter, but I just think DDP, I was looking for a strong argument from Strickland in that first fight to say that he could do things vastly different, and I just don't see it at this point. So give me Dricus Du Plessis here.
I'm not really trying to promote the Anik and Florian rewind on UFC Fight Pass as much as I am acknowledging how exciting and exhilarating it was for Kenny and I, Bri, to watch that fight back and to dive into the judges' scorecards, right? Yeah. I think Sal D'Amato scoring round 3 for Sean Strickland when, as soon as Sean returns to the corner, Eric Nixick says to him, I didn't like that round at all. And Kenny and I believe, watching round 2 in which Sean Strickland got a shit ton done on the feet, and then there's a late takedown for Du Plessis, but not really an effective grappling round. So I know DDP of Fine Fettle felt great after 10 minutes, but Kenny and I kind of felt like he was down 2-0, if memory serves, Kenny. Yeah. The rematch is upon us this weekend. The betting line is more robust in favor of Du Plessis. Brian Petrie, who wins the undisputed UFC middleweight championship here coming up this weekend.
Yeah, great fight. I've rewatched that, the first fight, multiple times, and I've come to the conclusion it's going to be a close fight. These guys are going to be destined to be competitive, close fights with one another. The one thing I will say is I did think DDP won. The one thing I will say is DDP, though, Sean Strickland's an awkward guy. He's got that Philly shell roll, the weird teep, the weird jab that really kind of throws you off and kind of breaks up your rhythm. That's his style. It's kind of hard to get in that if you've never really seen it before. DDP has spent 5 rounds with it. So even though he started slow, I feel like he's going to start fast this time because here we go. Some graphics. Ooh.
We're getting fancy. We're getting fancy.
Golly. Well, that blew me on my jack. I think DDP is going to start better than he did in the first fight because he's got a little bit of read on Strickland. With a guy like Strickland who spars so much and he's locked into what he does, he's not going to change much. He needs to change the one thing, in my opinion, for him to really excel and win in this fight is he tends to play it real safe, really crisp, really good technique. And at the end of the round, he goes kind of berserk and he tries to steal it and he tries to let loose. And we need more explosive moments from Sean. He's got a great straight right hand. That's what he caught Izzy with. We need more explosive moments. I feel like with the DDP fight, first fight, especially once DDP started landing takedowns, he went to safe mode. He went to, I'm going to do what works. I'm jabbing this guy's head off. But is a jab worth, 5 jabs worth more than a hard uppercut? Because DDP was landing those. It gets tricky when it gets to scoring like that, but I can understand why Sean thought he won. He landed more strikes. I thought DDP landed more effective strikes. There was some blood on Sean. I know it might have been from a headbutt, but anyway, I like DDP in this fight. It's so funny. A couple months ago, a couple years ago, I could have swore I put everything I had on Robert Whittaker beating DDP, and I've criticized the way he fights. It's not, it's unique looking, but that's what makes him so good is the offbeat rhythm and he collides in with 2 feet sometimes. It's very different. We can all mock it where everybody works, and this guy's a dog. He's an animal. The training room stories about this dude, about how he just won't quit is next level. And I've really appreciated and grown a fan of Dricus Du Plessis. And I think he's going to win this fight. I think it's going to be close again, but I do think he's going to win. Maybe we're going to go 4-1 if he has a really good night, 3-2, but it should be a clear cut victory for Dricus Du Plessis. And I don't want to get ahead of myself here because obviously Strickland could win, but man, I'm already thinking about DDP versus Khamzat Chimaev. That would be a fucking war, boys.
I mean, I said my dream fight for 2025, Dricus Du Plessis versus Khamzat Chimaev. But of course, first things first. But what a 3-striper for Dricus Du Plessis, right? Robert Whittaker, Sean Strickland, Israel Adesanya, and now trying to maybe win with a little bit more dominance against Sean Strickland in his second championship defense. All right, time now for Place Your Bets, brought to you by JohnAnik.com, where you can get 15% off of your entire Anik and Florian podcast or one more sleep merchandise order with promo code UFC312. Also, be sure to check out KenFloRian.com. All right, John Clark, let's go. Madison, Wisconsin.
What's going on, boys?
It's good to see you, brother. How we doing?
I'm good. How you doing?
We are doing well. We appreciate you joining us. We appreciate you chiming in. We're excited to have you today to give your bets for UFC 312. I guess I'm just curious in terms of your Saturday night for a regular pay-per-view there in Madison, Wisconsin. Are you able to watch these fights live? What do you do for a living? What's your pay-per-view weekend usually like?
So for a living, I work with disabled people, mainly powered wheelchairs. I fix them up, do adjustments, comfort adjustments, whatever they need, that kind of stuff. I'll diagnose problems they're having, work with insurance, that kind of stuff. Pay-per-views, I love watching at home, preferably. Otherwise, I will go to like B-Dubs or Dave & Buster's where I can watch them. So recently also got the wife a little addicted into it. She's even sending me posts about like multiple straight weekends. So we're watching all the time now.
All right, well, here's the deal. Jonathan Clark with us live on the Anik and Florian podcast. Next show in the Midwest, my 2 tickets are yours, right? So if we end up anywhere in that Midwest pocket, my 2
I've been
tickets.
hearing about Chicago coming up. I've been looking out. I'm definitely going to be there. So that is awesome.
You just basically, if that ends up being a pay-per-view, you just got 2 tickets to the pay-per-view in Chicago. And actually, I was going to give my 2 tickets. What's that?
Maybe even Bilal Muhammad will make an appearance on that one.
You know, it's funny. I was actually going to give my 2 tickets to Bilal, and I just gave them to fucking John Clark instead.
Sorry, Bilal.
If Chicago's real,
right,
we'll be there. We'll have a nice little meetup, John Clark. It'd be fun to watch the fights.
Oh, I love it.
All right, so nice job by Curtis Hoagland last week. I missed his voice already. He did hit on a straight wager of Nasruddin Imavov as the betting underdog. I haven't tallied the results for the first 2 cards of the year. Maybe Big Gun can do that for me on the back end. But John Clark, UFC 312 this weekend, you have $2,000 to spend. How are you placing your bets for 312, my man?
All right. Well, actually, listening to you guys, I think me and Brian might match up a little bit here. He was giving a lot of the same picks I was giving. So first off, let's go with Bellato by 700. I think he's got that dog in him. I think he's going to be throwing. I think he's going to be ready for Jimmy. Next one, I'm going to go 300 on Justin Tafa by KO. I think he's going to light the place on fire. You know, Teixeira, he likes to get hit. That's what I saw from his contender series. I think you can't get hit by Tafa. I think he's going to come in. He's going to hit a big shot. He's going to set the place crazy. Let's go. I'm going to go Weili for 400. I think she's going to show how dominant she actually really is in this division, how much of a top champion she is. So 400. And then one on the prelims, a little interesting pick that people may not agree with. I'm going to go Bruno Brazil for 300. I think Wayne Khan coming off a loss. I think Bruno Brazil looked good against Meatball Molly. So I'm going to rock with her. That's a good number by her name.
I just love when guys come on and they give preliminary selections because it just shows me the extent to which you're invested throwing out a $300 straight wager on Bruno Brazil. We're going to keep John Clark here for the predictions, or the bets, I should say, for KenFlo and Brian Petrie. Petrie, after a week off, you have $2,000 to spend at UFC 312. I know you like the way Johnny Clark attacked the board.
Sure.
How are you spending your 2K, good sir?
Don't want to be a thorn in your side, but I thought pay-per-views were 3K, Johnny, this year. Am I mistaken?
Well, I think it was that last one, maybe.
So you're right, Brian. Yeah. So I am ill-prepared.
Okay.
My suitcase isn't even packed, so let's give you 3K to spend here for Place Your Bets, since you laid it out that way. And Kenny, if you want to add an extra $1,000, feel free. Go ahead, BP.
Mine's easy, John, right? Take that $3,000 you gave me. Let's hit the prelims. Put it on a guy named Cody Steele, minus 245 currently on DraftKings. 3,000 Cody Steele. He's getting a finish. He's getting him out of there. I love this kid. I love everything about him. Cody Steele, the real deal. 3K, baby.
I've been waiting my entire life hosting this program for somebody to put $3,000 on a straight wager, right? Because when I get wayward in my sportsbook account, Kenny, and when I lose a lot of money and I'm making all these deposits and no withdrawals, it's when I get all cute and parlays and five backs and all this stuff. $3,000 straight wager on Cody Steele for Brian Petrie. Now the floor belongs to you, Kenneth Allen. Florian, go ahead.
Well, I'm a little kitty patootie, so here we go. Give me 1,000, $1,000 on Topuria and Matthews on a parlay.
And a parlay.
All right, we're gonna give me another 1,000 on Matthews. How's that?
Golly,
watch
kid.
Prado just spoil the party.
Golly, kid.
Oh my God. Tatiana Suarez, 750. 750.
Wow.
And I believe that's 250 left.
Yep.
And I'll put that on the man from South Africa, DDP. 250. Let's go.
Absolutely fascinating to see how this plays out. So, John Clark, before we let you go, are you a Green Bay Packers fan?
I am not, actually. I'm a Colts fan, sadly.
Well,
From Indianapolis originally, so.
Okay. All right. Well, we appreciate your contributions to this show, to be sure. And you and I are obviously in connection on the back end. So hopefully we see you in the Midwest, but we appreciate you stepping up today. And as always, we have a pile of people who beat these guys head to head, and no pressure, but a pile of people who don't beat them head to head. If you beat either Kenny or Brian head to head, you go in the good pile, and we'll see you back on the Anik and Florian podcast. So thank you for supporting the show, and thanks for hopping on.
Good job, John.
Sounds good. Thank you, boys.
Good job, John.
All right, John Clark with us here for Place Your Bets, and we're going to let Big Gun Brian Petrie get on out of here as well. He hosts the MMA Takes podcast. You can follow him at Brian Petrie MMA, and he's already gone because I think joining us live from Mexico City, Mexico, as he gets ready for February 22nd against Rob Font, is the consensus greatest bantamweight of all time, the former two-time UFC bantamweight champion, Dominick Cruz. Dom, can you hear me there in Mexico City?
I can hear you. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Loud and clear.
Great. Good to see you guys.
It's great to see you, even though we can't see you, but we will take the audio. I know last time we had you from Mexico City, the video was a little bit wayward, so we're going audio only today. So I mentioned off the top of the show that for Nassourdine Imavov to beat Izzy like that 6 or 6.5 days before the belt in that division is on the line is like a really big deal for him. So I know you're in preparation mode, but like, are you watching Imavov knock out Izzy live this weekend or no?
Oh yeah, and you have to look at that as an athlete and see, okay, I look at it from a different perspective. I look at it as, look at another great like Izzy who's done what he's done for the sport, taking a chance at the highest level against one of the best that nobody knows. Nobody, I mean, I hate to say it, but nobody really knows Imavov until this fight now. Now you know Imavov. That's why you don't see guys like, that's why you don't see guys like Canelo taking fights with Benavidez, because why would I take a risk with Benavidez when he brings nothing to the table except being a giant that could possibly kill him? So Imavov and Izzy, that's how I look at it. I look at it as kudos to Izzy for taking the chance. I mean, this sport, people don't realize all the athletes in the top 10 are champions. They're like, if you're in the top 10 of the division, you're already a champion. So, for Izzy to take that risk and put his accolades on the line to go give a chance to another guy, pretty incredible stuff to do that.
Reminded me a little bit of the time you fought Casey Kenny. I know the circumstances were a little bit different, but you and Adesanya have a pretty special connection. I know you haven't spent a lot of time with him, but watching the two of you guys go back and forth in a fighter meeting recently, I think before UFC 305, if I'm not mistaken, I don't know when it was, but it was pretty special. And you talked about Izzy having this like Michael Jordan type aura. What was it about Izzy that you sort of reacted to in a magnetic way?
It's saying somebody's like Michael Jordan will trigger people, so I'm careful with those words because people get real weird about it.
That's my word, my headline. Sorry,
but I would say energy is energy, and energy doesn't lie. And the guy clearly has championship style energy. It's hard to explain that until you get into a room with a great. Honestly, like when you get into a room with Khabib, you feel energy. When you get into a room with John Jones, there's a different energy. I cannot explain it any other way except that these guys carry a specific type of energy that's respectable, that if you don't respect it, it's because you're not paying attention what's going on. Like you're not paying attention to something that this person has that makes them different. And it's not just what they've done. What they've done is because the energy has always been there and they've used it to create something. And Izzy kind of has that for me.
Well, Dom, I always know you're paying attention, man. This strawweight championship coming up, Zhang Weili against Tatiana Suarez. How do you see this one going?
It's actually I think I love watching the women's sport just continue to get better and better. Honestly, like the levels of competition are growing, and Zhang Weili is epic to watch always. And when you watch Tatiana Suarez, like her or not, because of her grappling, she's getting put up against such a specimen of striking and athleticism that fight is going to be fun to watch. And the reason is because you got striker versus grappler. I personally have to go with the American style wrestling because I see the size, the length. She's a dog. I think she's a good bet being a dog in that matchup with the size and the length. But, you know, if you were ever going to give anybody a chance in that division versus Suarez, that's why this fight is interesting. It's going to be Weili. She's pretty much one of the only girls in this division I think that can get the job done against Suarez. Other than that, I think Suarez is the champion already, personally.
And Dom, in the main event, you know, Sean Strickland got off to a great start, in my opinion, against Dricus Du Plessis. What does he need to do a little bit differently here against DDP to get the win?
Well, what I love about this matchup is it doesn't come down to the tools necessarily. It comes down to the mindset. And I think DDP just has such an iron mind is the best way to put it. It is iron. And I'm not hating on Strickland in any sense of the matter, but I don't know if I would say he has an iron mind. I would say that his mind is there and he's strong and he's tough and he's got a championship mindset, but I don't know if it's an iron mind. Like when you look at DDP, you cannot piss him off. He doesn't give away his power is the best way I can put it. You can try everything in the book to shake DDP and he will not afford you the luxury to be shook. Whereas I don't see that with Sean Strickland necessarily. Right. He will gladly give out his power to anybody in the world. If you walk by him and nudge him wrong, he will sleep you in the middle of the street and give you an opportunity to sue him. That is giving away your power. Even if you're as some would say, a weaker person to do that, that's not true, because the fact that that's even an option means, is that weakness or is that a strength that you can't, keep your stuff in? An iron mind keeps that stuff in. You never gave away your power. And DDP just hasn't seemed to do that once, ever.
Future UFC Hall of Famer Dominick Cruz with us live here on the Anik and Florian podcast. Now, I am more weak-minded than Kenny and Dom. I have multiple times in my life given away my power, either by showing my temper or not managing my anger properly. Certainly you don't see this on television, but it's an interesting point, Dom, because it's something that I'm constantly working on. And I do think it should be front of mind when you're assessing Dricus Du Plessis. Dom, Tatiana Suarez is no longer the betting underdog. And it's because, Dominick Cruz, Chael Sonnen, Kenny Florian, Ray Longo, every single person that I have probed is picking the American wrestler, Tatiana Suarez. Now, maybe you're a little bit biased because you are an American wrestler, but at some point, should Zhang Weili's experience count for something? I mean, maybe Tatiana Suarez is just that good, and her relationship with Patchy Mix, in theory, has been a huge asset to her. But, dude, I mean, Zhang Weili is going to be the underdog, and she looks to me like the greatest strawweight of all time in her prime.
Well, thank God for the women's division. Like, let's be honest, making her an underdog is why people are going to watch. Like, what? Her, an underdog?
Right.
How? You're right. I can't really make sense of it either. And that's why this, the women's division that's how you know it's growing. You don't see this often. You usually see a washout. No chance against Tatiana Suarez. There is a huge chance for Weili to win this battle. It's just, I think that the American wrestler is going to pull it off this time. I could be wrong. I'm not the best gambler in the world. That's for sure. I don't really gamble, but, unless it's my own life that I'm gambling. But with these two, I think that's a great match. And that's why you make a good point. I don't know how I could necessarily bet against Weili, but something in my gut says to.
All right. Before I let you go, sometimes in MMA, we have champions that the fellow contenders think are hugely beatable, right? And I've said this before. Sean O'Malley is an absolute sniper. There's no denying the striking acumen, the gifts, and everything else. But when he was the 135-pound champion, a lot of his contemporaries like yourself were salivating at the opportunity to get a title shot against him. I think a lot of people, maybe before the Umar Nurmagomedov fight, felt like Merab Dvalishvili was a beatable champion. I think a lot of people felt like Sean Strickland or Dricus Du Plessis are beatable champions. A lot of people think Bilal Muhammad is the champion that they would beat. So I would ask you about the champion in your division, Merab Dvalishvili. If you're preparing for that guy that seems to be half man, half machine, what is the biggest key to trying to beat a guy that for me has no point of comparison in modern day MMA?
Oh, no question. I have the answer to this, and it's footwork. If you can move your feet, you can move your body. And if you're not there, it doesn't matter how strong, it doesn't matter how good your cardio is. None of that matters if you can't be touched. It becomes a wash. And now one person's getting hit out of the two. And that's the person that has the footwork gets to hit the person that doesn't. Because the person who stands in front and doesn't have that gap filled is there to be hit. Now, it doesn't mean that there's obviously always an opening in MMA fighting, and that's why we all watch it. Nothing's a guarantee.
Right.
But I see footwork being a key fundamental in beating somebody like Merab Dvalishvili because he fights in straight lines. Everything he does is to set up or take a shot, and his shot attempts set up his strike attempts. But all of them are on the same set of train tracks. What happens if you put a bunch of loops in a train track? What happens to the train? It becomes useless.
Right.
So this is the thing that certain people in the division can tap into, I believe. And, never forget, nobody had run under a 4-minute mile until somebody ran under a 4-minute mile. And then like 11 people followed it the next day.
Right.
So
right.
Once you unhook that leak, people generally jump on board. And that's why champions who lose the title and can come back and win it are so revered, especially 2-3 times like Randy Couture, because they've already been adjusted to somewhere, and then they've come back and readjusted the adjustment, lost it again, and then readjusted the adjustment again. That is so difficult to do. And that's why having a loss is so much more respectable to me as a champion than an undefeated champion, because are they undefeated or did they just stop too early? Because that person needs to challenge themselves till they get beat. And then that sets the new bar for them to see how they can set the new bar for themselves. And Merab Dvalishvili has shown he has that in his armor. He's lost enough times on the way up to this title that now that he's here, he's a proven champion. As I've said, he's already faced those adversaries, lost, had to get back on the track. And now with all those things and all those tools he's learned, he's such a difficult guy to beat because he's already lost. It's wild.
Right. Started 0-2 in the UFC. We'll see if Umar Nurmagomedov can make some adjustments if, in fact, he gets that rematch. The Dominator always bringing the analysis, my man. And very cool to see Merab acknowledge you immediately upon being probed about potentially being the greatest bantamweight of all time. He injects the name Dominick Cruz. I know you're not, living and dying with every appreciative or bad word said about you, but I oftentimes will say the most basic human needs to feel appreciated. So I would think for you, feeling that appreciation from the current champion and your contemporaries felt some kind of good.
Oh, I'm definitely human. So that definitely felt nice to hear from a guy like Merab. It's awesome because of like I said, I respect his journey to the title so much. He basically cleared out the division before he got there. And then now the division's almost clear. It's like, okay, well, now what are you going to do to me? Because I already had to beat everybody in the kitchen sink just to get a shot at the title. So now what? And I felt that similar feeling before. And so I can have nothing but respect for where he's at right now. And yeah, of course it means a lot. And I think people who, choose the greatest of all time are always going to choose from a certain set of interpretations in their own minds, right? Like I said, we went back to Jordan, LeBron James, Kobe Bryant. You cannot argue that all three of them aren't the greatest of all time in some sort of way or shape or form. And that's okay. But everybody has their reasons. And that's what makes it fun to watch the sport, is that nobody has the exact same mindset.
I love it. Well, I know you'll be watching live UFC 312, and we will harken back to your 2016 win over TJ Dillashaw, by the way, on the UFC 312 weigh-in show. That's a spoiler alert. So if you want to tune in, I'll be acknowledging.
Nobody said I could do. I'm going to go ahead and take you back. Okay. Back in this time, That was impossible. I was too old. He was the new. I was broken. Media, ring rust is too much. Media said that it couldn't be done. No athlete has gone through this many injuries and come back. These are all the things that were told to me. So I'm going to just remind the world, people forget about those headlines because they're not here anymore. But yet, not a chance in hell was I given, and it got the job done. So again, go make it happen, people. Go make it happen. Don't listen.
My man, Dominick Cruz, wish you all the best later this month. Appreciate the time, brother. We'll talk to you soon.
Love you guys. Thanks.
All right, there he is, former two-time UFC bantamweight champion Dominick Cruz, the future Hall of Famer, with us here live. He certainly lit up the TD Garden that night in 2016. We got to get on out of here. I'm going to try to pack a suitcase. Thankfully, my tequila buzz has worn off a little bit. Thank you to Dominick Cruz, Ray Longo, Brian Petrie, John Clack, making predictions today. Thank you to our producer, Cody Merrill, business manager, Jason Anik. Don't forget, KenFlorian.com, JonAnik.com. Also, don't forget, remember the show with Jason Anik and the UFC welterweight champion, Bilal Muhammad, live most Thursdays over on the Anik and Florian Podcast YouTube channel. And we will be back with a live pay-per-view recap, 5:30 p.m. Eastern on Monday, February 10th. I'm going to collect my baggage, God willing, drive home, and we will bring you our pay-per-view recap in a week. Thanks to everybody for indulging us live. For KenFlo, I'm Jon Anik. Enjoy the pay-per-view this weekend. We'll talk to you next Monday. Until then, yo later.
I love this shit.